I've just purchased one of my absolute dream cars. This right here is a Mazda RX-7 FC Turbo 2, as you can see by the air intake there. I will be turning it from this into this. Well, the camera doesn't focus at all. But this right here is Ryosuke Takahashi's FC3S RX-7 from the Initial D anime. And because I'm a hardcore Initial D fan, obviously I need to turn this into a one-to-one replica car. Now, as you can see by the amount of parts that's right behind me, there's this little problem with the car. Because see, even though it looks perfect and in mint condition from the outside, and to be fair, also on the inside, it is super clean in here. This baby really has some problems, and actually, this is gonna be a lot of work. And if you're asking yourself what the problem is, then, well, here it is. Of course it's the engine. After all, it's a rotary. Now the biggest problem apart from this engine situation is that this car has actually been sitting in a barn for 14 years. Now the good part about this is that it actually runs, and it runs decent, but this thing really needs a rebuild. As you can see, all of the belts are super brittle already. Compression is also not the best on this engine. It's right around 90 psi, which is not the worst, but also not the best. Good thing though, it runs.
Now, as I mentioned before, the FC has been sitting in a barn for 14 years, which means we have a lot of maintenance ahead of us. Also, here in Germany, we have something very similar to the Japanese Shaken. This is basically an inspection that happens every 2 years where the car is checked for roadworthiness. And to get it ready for this inspection, we first need to sort out a few things, starting with the brakes.
Alright, now for brakes, I decided to go for the OEM spec brakes because, to be honest, on the Turbo 2 the brakes are actually more than enough stock. That's why I went for new brake discs front and for the rear, and I also decided to get myself some brake lines. These are actually braided steel brake lines just to improve the brake feel a little bit. Obviously also I bought some new brake pads front and rear. Nothing fancy here. However, before we address the brakes, there's one more thing that I want to take a look at, and that is the fuse box. See, because when I got the car, I noticed that the dash lights don't work. None of them. Now the problem is that I'm not getting, like, it doesn't matter if I turn on the headlights or like start the car, I'm not getting any illumination from the tachometer as well as the AC unit. These are supposed to light up. So what I thought I would be doing is check all of the fuses first. Now the problem is that with my particular car, there's no fuse box cover, as you can see down here, which creates a unique problem. And then I'm gonna see if the actual illumination on the interior, all of the dash lights, if they work. If not, I also did a bit of research, and then we might actually have a problem with the dimmer switch right here, which sits at the end of the headlight control thingy, as you can see. And yeah, that's gonna be really expensive. So one of these costs 700 euro, which is just totally out of my budget right now.
Replacing the fuses is extremely simple and anyone can do it at home. Just rip out the old ones and put the new ones in. It is very important, however, that you stick precisely to your specific fuse layout.
If this does not work now, I'm kind of screwed actually. Okay, nice. Wiper still doesn't work. Weirdly enough, the windshield washer fluid thing, that works. Let's test out if the lights work. They still do not work. Oh my god. If you know what could be the problem, please leave it in the comments below, but like I really don't know at this point. Let's do the brakes. Hopefully we have more luck with the brakes. Also guys, if you made it this far into the video, I just want to say a big thank you, and also want to remind you that if you want to see more of this build, then please consider subscribing, because I think this is going to be a super cool project. Make sure you don't miss out on that.
To replace the entire brake system, we first need to take off the wheels. Then remove the aligning screws. Well, I mean, at least try to remove them. Oh, and this is also the point where I decided to jack up the car from the front to be able to turn the steering wheel freely. This gives me better access to the brakes.
I don't know if you saw it before, I think I filmed it, but just look at these little screws down here, these Phillips head screws. These are the screws that hold them in, or like basically just little alignment screws, and these are so rusty. I already tried to clean them off with a metal wire brush and to get them loose with like some WD-40.
The screws didn't even budge, so I moved on to removing the brake calipers. Just remove the pins that hold the brake pads in place, remove the springs and rip out the old brake pads. After that, there are only 2 bolts left that hold the caliper to the car, which are usually extremely seized, and I decided to get a breaker bar.
I really thought I would just strip the bolts completely, but it worked. At least for the first bolt it worked. Knock on wood. Okay guys, I finally managed to open the bolts on the brake discs. Well, but now we kind of have a whole nother problem actually. And this is the brake calipers. This right here, the front left brake caliper. And stock they come with a 4-piston caliper, which is pretty cool. Except it's not cool if one of the calipers is completely stuck. Both of the pistons up here, they can retract fully, the one down here as well, but this one does not want to move at all. What I already tried is to use a bit of pressurized air to basically just put enough pressure into the calipers so the pistons pop out. This worked great for exactly 2 of the pistons. The other 2 pistons were completely stuck.
And because the brake rotors were so rusted to the hub that I couldn't even get them off with a hammer, there was only one thing left that I could do for now. And this is to
change the brake lines for the braided steel ones, which are gonna feel so much better than the stock rubber ones.
Braided steel lines have a huge benefit over rubber lines. Not only are they stiffer and therefore don't expand as much as rubber lines when you hit the brakes, they also last longer from a maintenance perspective.
We have just installed the braided steel brake lines. These are gonna feel so much better on the car and they look so much cooler. Not that you could actually see the brake lines anyways when the wheels are back on, but just they look cool. I'm just gonna put the wheels back on for now and continue tomorrow with the brake calipers once I got the pistons out. For now, let's just repeat the same steps on the left side, on the driver's side, and install the braided steel brake line.
I thought replacing the brake system would be smooth sailing, and well, I may have been a little naive, but for me it doesn't matter, because I love this car already, and seriously, how could you not love this absolute time capsule from the 80s? Also, this just gives me the excellent opportunity to learn so much more about this car than I would have if everything went smooth.
Because let's be honest, there are always going to be obstacles in your way no matter what you do, so let's just face them with a positive attitude. This right here is our old rubber brake line. I cannot really see any punctures or points where it ripped. Well, we got better ones. Braided steel. It's gonna feel so awesome. Yeah guys, that's it. And that's brake line numero 2.
Next, I picked up my seized calipers from the mechanic, and sadly they couldn't get the pistons out either, so I will probably have to order a new pair, which is a bummer, but what they could help me with, however, is the brake rotors. They gave me a special tool which should make it much easier to remove my rusty rotors.
Now sadly, I really don't have any time left to change the brakes, because actually tomorrow on the 1st of February I will be going to South Korea, so leave it in the comments below if there's anything particular that you want to see, especially about the car culture, something like that. I already made some plans for you, so don't worry, but as I said, if there's anything special that you want to see, or any special place that you want me to go to, leave it in the comments below. I will also be creating a community post where you can also leave your comment. But guys, no more talking, I want to end this video on a positive note. And that said, let me tell you that I've actually fixed the cluster illumination, and the way I actually fixed it was super weird. Now, after changing all of the fuses and replacing them for new ones, it still didn't work, so I was kind of lost. So the next suspicion that I had was that it may have something to do with the dimmer switch right here. Now this could have been very expensive actually. One of these costs 700 euro, which as I said is totally out of my budget right now, because there's so much stuff to do on this car and so many things to buy. I actually started disassembling the entire cluster thing around here, and I couldn't find anything. But right when I just wanted to give up because I couldn't find anything, I decided to put everything back together, and that's where it started working suddenly, out of nowhere. And I found out that it was actually just like a broken connection, like a broken cable. I replaced that, and now everything's a mint.
But today, well, we're going to rip out the entire engine for a rebuild. Now this is gonna be extremely fun because I'm not a professional mechanic and I've never pulled an engine out of a car, let alone rebuilt an engine in my entire life. But don't worry, I've watched exactly 3 YouTube videos on how to do it, so I'm basically a professional myself. Now I decided that it would be a good idea to first pull off all of the accessories like the intercooler, the intake manifold, so on and so forth, before I pull out the engine. This gives me just better access to everything in the hopes of making this super intriguing job a little bit, well, less intriguing. However, this also means that we will need a lot of these right here to label everything and to make sure that everything goes back together the way I took it out. I've decided to start taking out the most bulky parts first, and in this case, that's the intake and the airbox. Labeling everything is extremely important here to make sure I don't mix anything up, as I've never worked on this engine before. And already the engine bay looks much more accessible. Next up, the huge fan shroud, which proved to be a little tricky to remove. As the clutch fan was still installed, it was impossible to get the shroud out, and wiggling didn't help. Removing the radiator hose to have more space also didn't help. And after violently staring at it for way too long... Oh my god, hell yeah! Seriously, I've been fighting with this shroud for like half an hour. And the problem is that this car still comes with a clutch fan, like basically all of the 90s cars. I'm definitely gonna get rid of this. I'm gonna switch over to electric fans on the new radiator. This old radiator is also gonna be replaced. I thought, you know, while I'm at it, I can also just remove this old and nasty clutch fan. However, this is held in by 4 nuts down there, and there's one nut that I can't get off because it's completely stripped. This means that I have to find a different solution on how to remove this. I don't know how I'm going to do that yet. Doesn't matter, there are more than enough accessories that I can remove for now. So eeny, meeny, miny, mo, intercooler has to go. Removing the stock intercooler just involved removing 2 bolts on the left and 2 bolts on the right side, which are holding the intercooler to a bracket. After removing the fan shroud, this was definitely refreshingly easy. And last but not least, disconnect the silicone hoses. Seriously, why are these always so stubborn? Yay! That's 1. Alright, that's 2. Well, and there it is. FC intercooler. This thing is super nasty. I'm definitely gonna have to clean this up. Oh, and I kind of need your help with something real quick. See, I want to turn the FC into this. This is the FC of Ryosuke Takahashi from the anime Initial D. And I want to turn it into a one-to-one replica from this anime. However, it's kind of difficult because, see, on the outside, it's pretty easy to buy all of the necessary parts. The lip, I can just look at it. I can look it up, buy it. The wheels, I can just look it up, buy them. However, for the interior, that's a totally different story. Because, see, in the anime, it's kind of difficult to make out which parts Ryosuke Takahashi is actually using for the interior of his FC RX-7. And this is why I need your help. If you know what kind of parts he's using on the FC, please let me know in the comments below. I already know which steering wheel I'm going for, and I've already ordered it actually, so we can tick that off. But for the seats and for the harness, in the anime you can't really make out which parts he's using. So, if you know what kind of parts he's running in the FC in the anime, please let me know in the comments below. And if you have any other suggestions on which seats I should buy, which harness I should buy, which cage I should maybe buy, also leave it in the comments below. Thank you for your help. Let's keep going. Next, we have to remove the old radiator. Simply loosen 2 bolts on the right and 2 bolts on the left, and disconnect the remaining coolant hoses. Okay, so far so good. Everything's disconnected. There's obviously still a bit of coolant in there. I'm just gonna drain that out once I get the radiator out in the hopes of not splashing the coolant everywhere. But, fingers crossed. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our old radiator. This goes into the bin. And after draining the last bit of coolant, we are done with the radiator. I mean, just look at how much space I have now. Seriously, I could actually stand in there. Told you. This kind of gives you an idea of how small this actual engine is. Just look at it. Like, I'm standing in the engine bay while the engine is still in here. That's awesome. All right, how am I gonna get out here again?
2 hours later.
And after removing a plethora of parts, draining all of the fluids and feeding the engine harness through the firewall, it is finally time to pull the engine. My god, guys, it's happening. It's my first engine pull. I'm super nervous, to be honest, but it's literally free. I can see the flywheel already. Oh, please, please just work. I'm really, really scared, to be honest, really. I think it's still stuck on the left engine mount there. Get this thing out. Well, and guys, there we have our 13B engine out of the car. This is my first engine pull ever, and I have to say it feels so crazy. I think anyone who's ever pulled an engine out of a car before can totally relate to that feeling. It's basically like doing a heart transplant, but never mind, I digress. Guys, seriously, you cannot believe how freaking excited I am about this engine being pulled. First of all, as I said before, I've never pulled an engine before, so this is a huge success for me and the first time ever. So I guess now I'm a real mechanic. I cannot believe that we got this engine out without any hiccups whatsoever. Like, literally nothing was stuck on the engine, no wires, no nothing. This is mainly because I literally just stuck to the workshop manual very strictly, and I made sure to disconnect every single thing before pulling this engine out. And just look at this engine bay. It's super dirty. The next step would be to definitely just clean this up and then give this baby a rebuild. And after all of the talking, let's strip the motor down to its bare minimum and free it from all the accessories, such as the intake and exhaust manifold, the turbo, and the famous rat's nest. we are almost down to the short block of the engine. I've removed a ton of parts already, as you can see down there, the clutch, the intake manifold, the infamous rat's nest, as well as the primary and secondary fuel rail. Now, I've stumbled across a small issue here, and if you look carefully at the intake manifold down there, you can see this gaping crack, which means that the exhaust manifold, which means that the exhaust manifold is basically complete toast. Now, I could weld this shut and make it work temporarily again, but anyways, I'm gonna continue freeing up the engine from all of its accessories, and then we are, well, gonna give it a full rebuild. Okay, so if you've watched the previous video, you probably remember me asking you if you know what kind of parts he's using on the FC. Please let me know in the comments below. And I just want to take a second to thank every single one of you who left a comment under the previous video telling me what parts I should buy. Now, I want to talk about something real quick because, as you've noticed, these are really not the parts that you suggested me to buy. So let me explain to you real quick why I've made that decision, and to be fair, why I was actually forced to make that decision. And the reason for it is that simply in Germany we have very strict rules about car modification. So it's really hard to modify your car in a legal way here in Germany. And the problem with all of the parts that you suggested in the comments below, which I just want to thank you real quick, there was one comment under the last video which totally shocked me because it was probably the most comprehensive list on what Ryosuke Takahashi uses on his FC in the Anime Initial D. But for now, as the main objective here is to get this thing through its main inspection, to get it street legal in general, we first need to install some parts that, well, that conform to German rules. But this doesn't mean that I'm going to install boring crap now, and some of these parts are actually true to the anime and street legal, which is super awesome, but more on that later. First, I'm gonna install the new seats, and to do that, we need vehicle-specific seat brackets. And before we can put the new seats in, we obviously need to remove the old seats first. And don't worry, I'm going to keep all of the original parts in case I become a purist one day and want to put all of the original parts back in. But that won't happen anytime soon, I think. I will definitely have to clean this mess up before we put the new seats in. But first, let's pull the driver's seat out. Oh, and we also got some free money, which is... oh my god. Wait, let me try to get the camera to focus on that. This car has been sitting for so long that I have literally just found old German currency. Nowadays we're using euro, but back then we used this. It's a pfennig. And there's another one. What is that? Oh, it's so filthy. So disgusting. What the hell is even that? Wait a minute.
Wait a minute!
That's a Greek coin. What does a Greek coin do in an FC RX-7? Also, what does this do in my FC RX-7? Anyways, I'm gonna add that to my coin collection, which is non-existent, but I mean, now at least I can start a coin collection. Oh, and by the way, do you remember when I said how clean this FC was in the first video? Well, I don't know what they've done to this carpet, but this is just so filthy. That's really disgusting. Quick question for you guys. Leave it in the comments below. Should I dye this carpet black? Or should I just try to clean it with like a wet vacuum? What are these called? Like the one that you like and then...
Huh?
Oh well. Now the problem is that I'm already kind of noticing that these seats are noticeably higher than the stock seats. It's just the same problem that I had with my old seats in my Skyline before. They were also like much higher, even though I really had some really low, what is it, like seat console. Anyways, let me just bolt it down real quick and see if everything fits. The seat brackets didn't fit at all. However, what could work is taking the old seat rails from the original seats and putting them on the new seats. Now, usually you would not do this, but in this case, I don't have any other choice. And also this means that we will be able to get the seats much lower than with these janky little things, because these suck. But first, let me try to fit it and let me see if anything lines up actually. Oh, and by the way, if you enjoy content like this, make sure you leave a like and consider subscribing, because there's more content ahead. And by the way, from now on, you can also support me as a channel member if you want to. And by doing so, you will greatly support the build and future content as well. So yeah, well, anyways, let's continue. Oh my God, this looks so much better. Like, as you can see, the entire seat just comes so much more down. I really hope this will work. But seriously, it actually looks like it will work. This is usually not the way you're supposed to do it, but I guess as long as it works, nothing wrong with it. Oh my God. Oh, seriously, this is so... Obviously they are not bolted down yet, but that's so awesome. I have so much more headroom. I'm sitting really nice and low, really nice and sporty. Feels much more connected to the actual car. Oh, this is just gonna feel so much better. I'm really excited about that. Now that we've got the new gorgeous seats in, well, I mean, at least the driver's seat, as the passenger's seat still sits at a small angle, which I will compensate with spacers. But now that we've got that out of the way, it is time for a part that is actually accurate to what Ryosuke used in the anime, and that is the steering wheel. For the steering wheel, I went with a Momo Monte Carlo, as I personally think it is the perfect steering wheel for this car. Also, I found a picture where apparently Ryosuke is also running this exact steering wheel in at least one episode. What I found out is that apparently he's running the Momo on his FC during the 5th stage in the anime. So this build is definitely gonna be a mixed match between all of the stages. But the good part about the steering wheel is that, well, at least it's street legal in Germany. I've also decided to put in a cargo net, which seems like a weird thing to do, but I thought it looked cool. And as this is not the final interior of the FC, I just thought, why not throw it in there? Now, what we're gonna do, I already started pulling out the climate vents, because see, on top we have a little crack on this, what I was taught is called a tombstone. And yeah, well, I'm basically just gonna try to super glue this back together, because I feel like this is gonna turn out relatively well. This crack should be relatively invisible. If not, I'm just gonna get a new one. Also, now we can take care of this situation, because this is, first of all, very ugly, and this is, second of all, very ugly and used as well. And also, you can probably tell that this shifter, now we're in first gear, it's just super tired and worn out, so... Let's change that. But why replace an old worn out part with something OEM when you can also upgrade? That's exactly why I got myself a short throw shifter. This will make shifting through the gears feel much more mechanical and fast. Whoa. I can already smell the gear oil. If you've ever smelled gear oil, you will probably remember how it smells, because it has a very distinct, disgusting smell to it. And I also remember that back then in my Skyline, this rubber boot didn't seal properly anymore, which meant that, yeah, well, my entire interior smelled like gear oil all the time. Okay. So, as you've just seen, this right here is our old shifter, and you can see it's pretty nasty. So I thought, instead of just ordering a replacement part, I would order this, which is a short throw shifter. And the cool thing is that if you compare these, the left one is much longer, which translates to a much shorter motion while shifting. On the website it said it fits a Miata and an FC RX-7. So I'm curious to see that. And thankfully it fit. However, I totally forgot to film that, so I'm really sorry about that. But instead, let's just move on to the shift boot, because this is actually pretty easy and I did not forget to film that, so there you go. Oh, and I really think this turned out insane. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the interior of the FC. I just think it looks insanely awesome. Very period correct, obviously with the seats not so much, but especially with the Momo Monte Carlo, with the classic Tomei shift knob, as well as the matching bright shift boot, which matches the seats. I also installed some extra gauges. You can probably not see it in this lighting, but this is water temp, this is boost, and this is battery voltage. I'm probably gonna switch them around and get another gauge holder for the ashtray where another 2 gauges sit. So I can also monitor the oil temperature as well as the air fuel mixture. And seriously, I don't know about you, but I just cannot believe how awesome this turned out. Obviously, this is not really the original interior from the Initial D anime, but as I said, this is only temporary. I might actually keep the steering wheel because this is actually, as far as I know, true to the anime, or at least true to one of the episodes of the anime. However, there's one more thing, and this is arguably the most important thing that we still need to install, and that's this right here. You can probably not tell, but now you can probably tell. Guys, seriously, if you know, you know. This is the actual cup holder from the anime Initial D that Takumi Fujiwara used in his AE86, and I thought it would be a nice touch to put it in the center as well. And by the way, my lovely girlfriend got me this, so if you're watching this, thank you very much, I love you. The white cup it just needs to be here. And there we have it, the original cup holder from the anime. I think this is like the one thing that I'm most happy about, because this just adds so much to the interior. Just look at it now. Awesome steering wheel, awesome seats, awesome shift knob, awesome shift boot, and boom, the original cup holder from the anime. It just looks so cool in here. As if it was made for it. Just look at it, super cool. Now we can roll the water on the edge of the cup and practice our drifting. So far, the RX-7 restoration project is going great. In the previous episodes, we've already pulled out the engine and prepared it for a rebuild. We've also completely transformed the interior from old and original to completely brand new. I think everything's going pretty well so far, but today we kind of need to face a few chores, and that includes cleaning the entire engine bay and get it ready for the engine being put back in after the rebuild. And also we're going to be tearing down the entire engine and prepare it for the actual rebuild. So I would say let's start with cleaning the engine bay, because this is probably the most tedious job. For this, I will be using common hand tools like a 10mm ratchet, as well as some brake clean and obviously tissue, gloves. And a friend of mine also suggested me this cleaning, whatever this is. It's called Wonder Clean, and I really hope this cleans well because we have to clean this entire engine bay. Before we can test it out though, we first need to get rid of all of the loose debris and vacuum the living crap out of this engine bay. But let's keep this very brief because I cannot wait to tear down the engine. But let's not miss out on the time-lapse ASMR. Okay, that's enough ASMR for today. And I gotta say, this Wonder Clean stuff doesn't suck as much as I thought, and I was able to get most of the grime off. Obviously, it's not perfect, even though I have removed many parts in the engine bay to be able to clean everything very well, but that's totally fine and I'm more than happy with the end result. Now for the firewall, I actually have a pretty cool idea because that's not going to stay white. I still cleaned it for good measure though. Also, I thought while I'm at it, I would just give the power steering pump pulleys a new paint job. Alright, now that we've got that out of the way, it's time to pull apart the engine. And to be honest, I'm kinda nervous about it because, see, the FC actually has 200,000 kilometers on the clock, which leads me to believe that this sucker is probably not the first engine that this car has ever had. I just hope it's still in good shape. I'm really curious on what's hiding inside, to be honest. Let's crack this baby open and let's start with this huge nut that holds the flywheel in. After removing the giant 54mm nut that secures the flywheel, it is time to remove the front cover to gain access to the so-called front stack. This stack consists of some gears, one of which spins the oil pump via a chain, a spacer, and 2 Torrington bearings. And after removing the oil pump assembly, as well as the front counterweight, we can take a look at these teeny weeny Torrington bearings before flipping the engine again and removing the flywheel. And now that the front cover and the flywheel is off, it is time to finally pull apart the engine. This starts with loosening all 18 tension bolts, which run through all of the plates and housings and sandwich the entire motor together. Alright guys, as you saw, my dad actually also joined because he was super curious to see how one of these works, because like me, he has never seen one of these in real life opened up. So anyways, we got it opened up. This is our first rotor, and just as a reference, if you've never seen a rotary engine before, this is my hand and this is the rotor. Like, it really doesn't show on video how tiny these are. Now, I've already noticed that on this corner seal right here, there is a missing rubber piece. Yeah, well, I think we're gonna be hit with many surprises while tearing this thing down. But looking at the rotor housings, they actually look super good. They don't have like any, yeah, you cannot feel anything. They're smooth as a baby's butt. Seriously, it's crazy. Yeah, we're just gonna tear it apart. And guys, take a look at this insane amount of carbon buildup on the rotors. These, by the way, are the infamous apex seals, which definitely need to be replaced. Alright, everything's falling in there. It's okay, I'm gonna take care of that later. Almost pinched my foot down. Oh, heavy. This would be our front rotor. So far, I think everything looks pretty good. Apart from the apex seals, these are just completely done. These should have been changed like years ago. I mean, obviously this thing has been sitting for 14 years, so. Yep, as to be expected, all of the seals go flying. That's totally fine. Okay, and that would be our front housing. Okay guys, now that we've finally disassembled the engine, I definitely need to go over these with a pressure washer. These are just filthy and insane. I went back home and used the pressure washer to clean the housings as well as the irons. And as you can tell by the clip playing right now, pressure washing didn't work very well, and I had to find a different solution and resorted to a soft wire wheel, which thankfully worked amazing to clean the 13B. Okay guys, and now that we've got the cleaning process out of the way, let's take a look at one of the rotor housings, because this, to my surprise, looks actually pretty good. Obviously, it's not perfect and it really should get some resurfacing, but I'm gonna talk about that in a second. I couldn't find any cracks, nothing. Also, when I run my fingernail over the surface, it's super smooth. There are no gouges, which is definitely very exciting. The one thing I saw on the spark plug holes, there's a little crack, but it's still in spec, thankfully. And as you can see, it's not perfectly clean yet. I still have to go over it with degreaser and also scrape out all of the corrosion from the cooling jackets. But other than that, this thing is rebuildable, I think. And even though I've cleaned the housings relatively well at this point, it still doesn't really look great, which is why I've decided to give it a full paint job. And no, I'm not gonna paint it white, this is simply the primer. And I know this is probably a little controversial, but I've decided to go for a very unconventional color combo here. Because, see, I'm kind of a sucker for pink, so I thought, well, why not? And after all, real men wear pink and Sigma males build pink engines. Shout out to Samet and Okachan from Yashio Factory. Guys, believe me when I tell you, this video was probably the most tedious video to make because, well, of all of the cleaning, the engine bay is clean now, the engine is semi-clean, I still need to clean the rotors, but like, seriously, this is such a tedious job. It's just incredible. And at some point I was literally like, no, screw it, I'm not gonna film that right now. I was so pissed, seriously. Because, oh my god, this is heavy. Cleaning the engine actually not only includes cleaning the outside of the engine, but also cleaning all of these little coolant seal grooves and yeah, scraping everything out. This was extremely tedious. And just as a small reference, this is my table after cleaning all of the rotor housings and the irons. Seriously, I'm just super excited for the next video because that will be much more fun, I think. I'm just glad when all of this is over and we can finally put this thing back together. We need to get rid of all of the old crap, starting with the 14-year-old fuel in the tank. But to take a look into the gas tank, we need to remove the carpet in the trunk, the sound deadening, and the fuel pump assembly, which is held in by a few screws. And after disconnecting the feed and return line, which took much longer than it looks in the video, we can pull out the fuel pump and the fuel level sensor. Alright, and now that we've got the fuel pump out of the car, let's take care of the mess down here because we really want to get all of this old gas out of the tank, so let's go. Getting the old gas out of the car is very important because gasoline actually loses its octane rating the longer it sits. I will get rid of it by pumping it out into a bucket with a hand pump. Now, of course, I don't want to waste this valuable 14-year-old gas, so I will be putting it into my Golf. Because, to be honest, the old lady drinks anything you put into it, so why not? And now, it's just a matter of repeating everything over and over again until the tank is empty. Alright, and now that we've got all of the old and bad fuel out of the tank, let's have a look inside. As you can see, there's still a little bit of liquid in there, but mostly the tank is actually empty. You can see all of the grime down there. I'm gonna clean that out with some paper towels, but most importantly, let's have a look at how our fuel level is looking. The tank of the Golf was pretty empty. Let's have a look at how much we've got now. Heck yeah, almost half a tank. Well, I guess that's what happens when you put all of your money into the RX-7 and don't have any money to fill up your gas anymore. But at least we got some free gas. Alright, the fuel tank is nice and clean. All of the bad fuel is out of there right now. So let's take care of the rest of the fuel system. Because when your car is sitting for a long time, your fuel does not only go bad, but your bad fuel also affects many other parts around your fuel system. For example, the fuel pump as well as the injectors. And because I don't want to take any risks with this build, I'm going to be replacing everything from the fuel pump to the injectors because I don't want to take any risks with my FC. And guys, of course, it wouldn't be me if I just went out there and bought a OEM replacement part. So I went for an upgrade. This right here is a upgrade Walbro fuel pump, which flows much better than the original pump. This comes with all of the necessary parts, with the fuel pump itself, with a new filter, with wiring, as well as a bit of new fuel line. So let's install the new fuel pump and finish everything in the trunk area so we can move on to the rest of the fuel system. Okay guys, I think this fuel pump is definitely worth to have a look at. Just look at all of this gunk. I don't know what these people were thinking, but apparently they've tried to glue the fuel pump in instead of securing it with zip ties, which you would normally do, which is what I'm also gonna do. But now that we got the old one out, let's put the new fuel pump in. But first we need to get rid of all of this glue or whatever it is. And just have a look at this beautiful new fuel pump. Now we can just put the entire fuel pump assembly back into the tank, screw it in, reconnect the feed and return line, and put the cover back on top. Next, it's time to take care of these old fuel injectors. Because I don't want any misfires in my freshly rebuilt engine, I will be swapping them for brand new replacement injectors. I will also get rid of the old fuel pressure regulator as I'm switching to an adjustable one with AN lines. Before I install the new injectors to the primary and secondary fuel rail, I first need to clean the fuel rails up a little bit and get rid of the old crusty fuel lines which are still attached to it. Looks much better, doesn't it? Then the fuel injectors can move into their new home with a little help of some grease on the new O-rings. Alright guys, and now that we've got the brand new fuel injectors installed onto the primary and secondary fuel rail, by the way, these look totally awesome, we can move on to another very important thing, and that would be changing the fuel filter, which sits literally right there where my finger is. We're gonna change that for a brand new one, as you can see right here. And also what we're gonna do is change these nasty fuel lines again right here, the feed and the return line. So let's go. The problem is that on the bottom of the fuel filter, there's a rubber fuel line connected to the hard line that runs on the bottom back to the fuel tank. And it's in a very bad location. Really a pain to get off, but never mind, let's go. And with the old filter out, we can put the new one in, alongside some new fuel lines. But first, we need to take the old filter out of its assembly and transfer it over to the new one, right after cutting the new fuel lines to length. And guys, check this out. First of all, my hands are super dirty because working on the underside of the car is always a dirty job. Anyways, check this out. We've got our new fuel filter installed, as well as our new feed and return fuel lines. I've also changed the bottom fuel line that goes from the filter down to the hard line. Now for the fuel system, we are actually mostly done. There's one more thing missing, and that would be the fuel pressure regulator, because I'm switching from the OEM one to an adjustable one. But sadly, that one didn't arrive in time, so we cannot do that one today. But don't worry, I don't want to leave you hanging, and there's one more thing that I've already talked about in the previous video that I want to do. And that would be taking care of the firewall, because even though it looks good again after cleaning it, it's still a bit boring, and I will spice it up a little with gold tape. And by the way, this does not only look super awesome, but it also has a practical function by acting as a heat shield, allowing almost no heat to get from the engine bay into the interior of the car. Not that this would be necessary with my bone stock 13B, but it still is a nice addition. And before putting the tape on, I made sure to get rid of all of the components that are still bolted onto the firewall, as this makes my job much easier, and it allows me to clean it a little better now that I got more space to work with. And I gotta say, working with this stuff was a real pleasure, as it is super easy to cut. Speaking of cutting, of course I made sure that the VIN plate is still fully visible by cutting out the tape. Alright guys, and have a look at that. I'm done with the top half right now. Obviously there are some wrinkles in it, but sadly you cannot get this to be wrinkle free. Anyways, I think it looks awesome. Let me know in the comments below what you think, but we're not done yet. Let's tackle the bottom half of the firewall. That B-roll was so fake, the battery isn't even plugged in. Okay guys, let me give you a quick rundown on what's the problem with my FC here. Because see, for the main inspection, we do not only need to figure out all of the mechanical stuff such as the brakes and the engine, but also many electrical problems. And even though previously the B-roll was kind of fake, actually there's some truth to it because my front and rear wiper do not work at all. Also, we will have to figure out this mess. This is actually not relevant for the inspection, but what is relevant for the inspection is, well, this and the headlights, because the problem with these is that one of them doesn't work properly. So with no further ado, let's take care of the headlights as well as the taillights. Do you approve, sir? That's what I thought. For the taillights, I went with a set of brand new, and yes, brand new OEM S5 taillights directly from Japan. And I still cannot get over the fact that you can still buy these brand new from Mazda. To install them, we first need to get access to where they will be mounted by removing the trunk carpet first. Then we need to disconnect the harness, which contains all of the bulbs, to put them into the new taillights. By the way, if you enjoy this video so far, please consider subscribing and leave a like. This would help me out so much to reach more people with my content. And if you want to gain access to exclusive benefits and, well, want to buy me my monthly beer, you can also now become a channel member. Thanks for the support. Okay, there's one small issue though, and that is that the JDM taillights, which these are actually much wider than the European taillights. The European taillights end right about here. The Japanese and the US models have the wider taillights. Now the problem with that is that the US and JDM taillights actually have license plate illumination built in, whereas the European models have it in the bumper, which looks super ugly. What this means is that the chassis is actually in the way because there's an extra bulb right behind here. So what I'm gonna have to do is actually drill into the chassis to make room for the taillight. I'm definitely not stoked about this, but well, we don't have any other option, and I think these are gonna look extremely awesome. Let's go. But before we do that, let's temporarily put the battery in to check if I put all of the bulbs in the right spot. And of course, I mixed two up and even forgot to put one in entirely. And after fixing my rookie mistakes, it is time to drill the holes to properly install the taillights. This is also the point in the video where my camera suddenly decided to stop recording and to corrupt all of the previously recorded footage. Alright guys, and would you look at that? Let me know in the comments below which one you actually prefer. The European taillights, which are a little bit shorter, I had them installed previously but I sold them, or the wide JDM/USDM taillights, which are these. I think they look insanely awesome, and I cannot believe that these are actually brand new from Japan and that you can actually buy brand new parts for a car from the 1980s. But anyways, now that we've got the taillights out of the way, let's move on to another very important part, and this is the headlights. Because these are super faded and have some weird overspray on them. So I will be replacing them with brand new ones and also be upgrading them with LED bulbs. But first guys, we obviously need to take a look at how the old headlights look And well, as suspected, these old headlights are... like this one doesn't even work properly. Anyways, we're definitely gonna change these out for the new LED ones. So let's see how much of a difference that will make. Okay, that's enough. I just really hope no one with photosensitive epilepsy is watching. And now that the old headlights are removed, it is time to prepare the new lenses for the install by replacing the bulbs that came with it with the brand new LED ones, which will not only look much better, but will also provide much better visibility. When installing LED bulbs, make sure that these are legal to use in your state or country. For Germany, these specific ones are actually legal, which is awesome because the RX-7 will get its main inspection soon. After putting everything back together in reverse order, let's have a look at how these shiny new headlights perform. Now that we got the headlights taken care of, we can take care of this mess by installing a new radio, and thankfully the FC wiring harness already came with these plug connectors, which means I can put the same connectors on the radio harness and plug everything in accordingly by just looking at the pinout diagram of the old harness and the new radio. Now I will actually not even be listening to any music in the RX-7 because I just want to enjoy the car and the sounds it produces. Therefore, I'm just installing this radio for navigation, etc. But of course, we have to test it out and see if this even works, because I literally just followed the wiring diagram on the old radio and on the new radio and just connected everything together the way I thought it's supposed to go together. So let's see if this even works. All right, key goes in and oh! It already works. Oh. It literally immediately connected to my phone. How is that even possible? Okay, no, actually, I had this radio previously in my Golf, and now I just basically transferred it from my Golf into the RX-7, so that's why I probably connected straight away. Wait, hold up. Copyright. Alright, so apparently the speakers work, which is good, and they don't even sound that bad. And guys, let me address something real quick. Old cars are awesome. They are raw, smell like oil, fuel and coolant, and just give you this dopamine rush only a few modern cars can give you. However, what is not so awesome about them is whenever you want to get into this damn thing, you need to go up to it with your key and unlock it manually on both sides, which is really annoying. And this is exactly why I'm going with one of these. Wow, camera doesn't focus at all. A central locking system. This means that after installing this, I will never have to go up to this thing with my key and unlock it manually again. I will just be able to unlock it with the press of a button. Well, and as you can see, I've already prepared this control unit a little bit because see, this control unit actually comes with many functions, including a full alarm system where the hazard lights are actually gonna light up and there's even a siren. But to be honest, I'm only here for the central locking function, so I basically just cut off all of the unnecessary cables. So now we can connect these little motors up to the control unit with some wires. These motors will sit behind the door cards, and once you press the button on the key, the control unit sends a signal to the motors, making them spin and unlock the doors via a linkage. The control unit also needs to be connected to the battery with this loom, which I will pull through the firewall. But first, we need to remove the door cards by loosening some screws. And also remove the two-stroke oil that I have already conveniently placed in them. And now we can take a look at the actual locking mechanism. As you can see right here, the lock switch is connected to the door lock via this rod. The motors need to be connected to this rod via a linkage. And now, once you press the button on the key, the motor will push the linkage and lock the door. Now the tedious work. Pulling the wires through the door and connecting them up to the motors. And after putting everything back together, I just have to repeat everything on the passenger side and connect everything up to the little control unit. Okay guys, let's see if this key does anything. It actually recognizes the key, which is really good. And I also heard from this motor that it moved. So in theory, let's watch this little lock thing and press it again. Hell yeah! I mean, it's actually kind of reversed because on the key, when I press the unlock button, it actually locks the car, but I think that's just the way this thing is mechanically set up, so I probably cannot do anything about that. Let's test out the driver's side. Actually, hold up. I cannot even hear any noise from the motor and the door. Oh no. Oh no. Guess that means I will have to take everything apart again. Now I just hope that it's one of the motors that's actually faulty, because the good thing is, thankfully, I actually have many spare motors, as you can see right here. 3, I think I have a 4th one somewhere. Let's take everything back apart. I will just skip this part.
2 hours later.
And it finally works. By the way, excuse the music and maybe the hammering in the background. My neighbor, well, likes to loudly listen to music sometimes and hammer all day long. And by sometimes, I actually mean almost every time I come to the shop. But anyways, that's not what it's about, because I've actually finally managed to fix it. The problem was not the motor, the problem was some of the wiring, and now it finally works. As you can see, right now it's unlocked in the up position. I also decided to take apart the passenger side again to switch the motor around, so that way these little buttons actually match up with what the car is actually doing. So whenever I press the lock button, it actually locks. So let's close the door and see if it actually works now. Let's see, it should be locked now. Hell yeah, locked. And the other side, let me check. The other side is also locked, or well, semi in the down position. And guys, now that we know that the central locking system finally works, this is actually super convenient. Let's take care of one last thing. And that would be RGB footwell lighting for the front and the back. And no, this is not sponsored. I've just used these LED strips in my Skyline before and I've never had any problems with it. So I thought I would run them again with this build. Alright guys, and now that all of the wires are hidden, as you can see, the footwell lighting is right here. You can barely see it. And well, now it's basically just a matter of connecting it up, which is pretty straightforward because, well, it's just plus and minus. I can just take it from the ignition. And would you look at that? Like seriously, this looks so cool. And I think I'm actually gonna leave it at red because it really fits all of these red accents, like the red stitching, the red horn button, the red stitching here, the red stitching here. So I think red really goes well with this. And guys, of course, that's not all, because in the rear we also have footwell lighting, which just looks insane. I'm really curious to see on how this will look in the dark. Now sadly, I'm on a pretty tight schedule currently, which means that I will not be able to finish the wipers and fix them. But I think in the future I will definitely have to release one of these like miscellaneous videos where we just fix like small things all around, because there's still so much to do. In the last couple of months, we have completely transformed this car. We've ripped out the old and nasty interior and replaced it with a brand new shiny interior. We've also taken care of many electrical issues, including the taillights, the headlights, and the cluster illumination. And probably the biggest thing, we've ripped out the entire engine, disassembled it, and got it ready for the rebuild. And guys, you know, working on this car is really fun, and I've been really enjoying it until now. But at this point, to be honest, I really cannot wait anymore to drive this thing. To drive it, well, we first need an engine. So let's build ourselves one. Now, as you can see by the mess on my hoodie, I've already prepared many things, including the rotors. I packed them fully, clearanced all of the side seals, which was really a pain in the butt. I've also cleaned all of the necessary engine parts, the E-shaft, the oil pump, chain, counterweight, etc. So everything's ready for the installation. And guys, let me give you a quick rundown on what I'm actually rebuilding here and what changes I've made to this engine. Well, first of all, the compression of the 13B wasn't all that great, which is why I pulled the engine in the first place. I decided to basically replace everything, including apex seals plus springs, side seals and their springs, the corner seals and, well, corner seal springs, as well as the oil control rings and, again, plus springs. On top of that, I replaced all of the gaskets, coolant seals, O-rings, as well as the front main and rear main seal. And as an honorable mention, I've also decided to replace the 2 stationary gear bearings and the 2 Torrington bearings off the front stack. And with everything looped up, it is time to put our front housing on, which will enclose the front rotor. Now we can put the infamous apex seals and their springs into place. This is pretty fiddly, but with a bit of patience, this will be done in no time. And by the way, I'm actually splitting this video into 2 parts, because I know it's pretty technical and there's a lot of talking, so I don't want to make this too long so you don't get bored. And now I will need to lube up the rotor bearing to prepare it for the E-shaft being put in. And after putting the second dowel O-ring in, we have to face the hardest part, getting the center iron on. To make it work, I need to slide the iron over the E-shaft, but to slide it over, I need to prop up the E-shaft from the bottom of the engine with my knee and simultaneously slide the iron over. And trust me, this center iron is not light. And because even the slightest bump could cause the coolant seals to fall out or the apex seal corners to pop up, we now have one last chance to check if everything looks good before slamming the iron on. Now that we've got the scariest part out of the way, we need to put the coolant seals in. And I guess I just got lucky here, or maybe the brand of coolant seals I was using is just easier to work with, but putting these in was much easier than most of the videos I've watched about 13B rebuilds made it out to be. Guys, and I know I should probably not say this right now, because we're still in the process of building this engine. At first it's like really intimidating, but guys, to be honest, if I can do it, seriously anyone can do it. I have no idea what I'm doing and it's really straightforward. It's just like building a giant set of Lego. So if you're in the situation where you are thinking about getting a rebuild, or I don't know, where you have to get a rebuild, guys, don't be intimidated by this job. It's really straightforward. You can just stick to the workshop manual and everything will be okay. And that's our coolant seals installed. Just gotta make sure that they don't twist up on themselves and everything looks good, which it does. So now we're ready to put the rear rotor on. And guys, I'm no professional at this, so definitely take my opinions that I'm sharing with you with a grain of salt. And also, let me clarify that there are certainly risks associated with rebuilding your own engine, especially if you've never done it before. This is exactly why shops exist that offer professional rebuilds. And if a professional is watching right now, I'm officially sorry. Please don't scold me in the comments, because I know that I've probably done 20 things wrong already. So just remember, yeah, I don't even have an excuse for that. Guys, I think the best way to summarize it is really that when it comes to building one of these, it's literally just patience. Take your time, don't rush anything, and at the end of the day, you will have a running rotary engine. And yes, while saying that, I can already see it coming, that this thing will not even turn over. Like, it only requires patience. And then it doesn't even turn over. That would be fun. But just take this from a guy who really has no experience with like mechanical stuff whatsoever. And you know, I make my mistakes and that's totally fine. You always keep learning. Okay guys, and we're actually making super good progress. As you can see, we already got the front iron, the front housing, center iron, rear housing, and now it's time to put the final iron on. And well, this involves first obviously cleaning it a little bit more and then putting all of the coolant seals in. And then, well, we got ourselves a rotary engine. Here, I'm putting the new inner and outer coolant seals into the rear iron before lubing everything up very well. The rear iron is also the last piece of the block itself, and after lowering it carefully onto the rear housing, it's time to put the 18 long bolts in, which sandwich the entire engine together once tightened. And of course, I'm not rebuilding an engine without throwing some upgrades in. So I also bought a new extremely light flywheel and counterweight, as well as a new clutch with all of the necessary accessories, such as a brand new master and slave cylinder, throwout bearing, as well as a braided clutch line. Now that the lightweight flywheel is on, I can put the giant 54mm nut onto the E-shaft. I will be tightening this later, but for now I will just put it there so I don't lose it. Now we need to take care of a very essential part of this engine build, assembling the front stack. On the front stack you will find your oil pump drive gear, the OMP gear, 2 Torrington bearings and a spacer. Oh, and I almost forgot, obviously also the front counterweight. Okay guys, now we are done with assembling the front stack. As you can see, we have our chain that drives the oil pump as well as our OMP gear, the counterweight and the little woodruff key that connects everything. I've already put the new front cover gasket on as well as a new O-ring right here. And now it is time to put this beautiful pink front housing on. Super excited for that, and after that we will try to turn it over. I should have probably done this earlier, but no risk, no fun. Oh, and this is also the point where I realized that I was dumb and already put the entire water pump assembly onto the front housing. So I had to take everything off again before finally fitting the front cover. Alright, and now we can finally put the water pump assembly back on because I was kind of dumb and I put it on before I put the front cover on. Okay. So let's turn this thing over to install the flywheel locker, because then we can actually install the front main bolt or whatever you want to call it. Okay, to be honest, I'm actually a little bit nervous because, well, this is basically the moment where I will see whether or not my rebuild was successful or, yeah, if this thing even spins over. I got my wrench with a 19mm socket. Let's put it on there and see if this thing spins over. Oh my god. Ooh, baby! That sounds like some good compression actually. And well guys, that's actually my first ever engine rebuild and well, also my first ever 13B rear build, and I think this turned out insane. Just look at this thing. Now guys, the only thing that's left to do now is to put all of the accessories such as the intake and exhaust manifold on, and the turbo, and basically all of the other stuff that we need, and then we can finally put this thing back into the RX-7. I actually cannot believe that this worked, but we're not 100% there yet, so let's just knock on plastic bumper and hope for the best. Ryosuke Takahashi's FC RX-7 from the initial D anime. And well, to bring it closer to the actual car from the anime, there are a couple of things that we need to sort out. So let's take care of the first thing, and that would be this right here. This thing just arrived in the mail, and I'm actually super excited to finally install this. This is gonna look so cool. And in case you couldn't tell yet, this is the new front lip for the FC, but obviously we cannot just bolt it onto the car without preparing it properly. And by preparing it, I mean painting it in the factory Mazda color crystal white, so it matches with the rest of the car. Now guys, obviously I'm super curious on how this will turn out. First of all, it's a spray can, so I'm really not expecting the most professional results here. But since it's just this little front lip down there, I think we can get away with it. And you've guessed it. Before painting the lip, it first needs to be free from any grease, which is why I'm rubbing it down thoroughly with silicone remover. And well, then it's basically already time for the primer. And guys, I just want to say thank you that you've made it this far into the video. And if you've made it this far, please make sure to subscribe. This would greatly support the channel and help me reach more people with my content. And guys, while the first coat of primer is drying right now, let me actually tell you about this lip. Because this right here is actually a Cork Sport lip from the US. And you know, usually this is actually priced relatively reasonably. It costs like $250. However, I'm from Germany, which means that shipping actually cost me another like $350 more than the actual product, and then I had to pay the customs fee, which was another like almost $200. So in total this thing almost cost me like $600 or $700, which is fun. So I really hope this thing turns out good and I'm just not completely messing it up with my DIY spray paint job.
2 hours later.
And guys, check this out. The lip is finally installed. I finished painting it, hit it with a bit of clear coat, and well, as you can tell, the white is not really matching because it's plastic, metal and fiberglass, so there's always a little bit of the difference. And guys, to be honest, this was really a pain in the butt because on the spray can it actually said that it only needs like 2 coats maximum. Yeah, I hit it with 5 coats and it still didn't cover very well. So I've actually used up all of the paint that I ordered, which means that I will have to order some more paint to paint the wing. And while I'm patiently waiting for the paint to arrive, let me address something real quick. You know guys, us car enthusiasts, we love to modify our cars. We love to enhance the performance, make it look better. But one thing that we tend to forget is safety. Because let's be honest, like, what is it worth to have a fancy shiny car when it gets wrecked or stolen immediately? And this is exactly why I knew from the beginning that I do not only want to make this car look great and perform good, but also make it safe and convenient. And this is where I want to say a huge thank you to iToto for sending me over their P8 on-dash add-on navigator device. And if you're wondering, like, bro, what does this thing have to do with safety? Let me explain it to you real quick. Now obviously, as you can tell, this thing adds a bunch of convenience to the RX-7 by adding wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. But the most important thing for me at least is that this thing comes with dash cams, not only for the front, but also for the rear. Let's have a look at what comes in the box. First of all, we got a manual, quick start guide, and a whole bunch of accessories. First, we got ourselves a front dash cam, which is super cool. Next, we got our reversing camera slash rear dash cam, a wireless remote to change the volume, and this little thing. I'm gonna show you what this does in a minute, as well as a 3.5mm audio jack, the mount for the device itself, the suction cup mount, and most importantly, the power adapter, and of course, the device itself. So guys, I'm just gonna conveniently place everything into this box right here and bring it to the car. Okay, let's install this thing. I got everything I need here in this box. What I plan to do is actually mount it down here where my ashtray is, because see, my ashtray is broken anyways. So this gives me the perfect opportunity to finally rip this thing out and put something fresh in there. And as you can tell, this thing literally fits perfect. It even comes with one of these sticky pads right here, so you can put this on there and then mount it on there with the suction cup as such, and it will sit right here. I don't want to do that because I really want to keep the interior of the FC, well, period correct and relatively classy. And even though it looks good and modern, I want to keep the classic touch to this interior, which is why I want to mount it down there in a very discreet location where you can still see it very well, but not like boom in your face. Let's plug this in as such and hide the wiring back here. Now let's find the necessary wire for the front dash cam and the rear dash cam. As you can see, it's also conveniently labeled with front and D for probably dash, at least I hope it stands for dash. And well, basically we're ready to go now. But before I put this in, let me install the front and rear dash cam real quick so we can route all of the wiring to the appropriate place. Alright guys, the front dash cam is installed. I've also installed the rear dash cam, which is actually super cool. I've never seen that. I mounted it up there on the rear window, so when you close it, as you can see, it is completely level. Let me know in the comments below what you think. I think that really looks awesome. Obviously, I could still put it on the dash itself, but I really want to keep this clean, and I think that really fits. Let's test it out by putting the key in. And let's see if this thing turns on. And sure enough, it actually does. And guys, there we have it. I think that looks super cool. Let's turn Bluetooth on and connect it to the iToto. Ooh. Okay, already connected. Perfect. Now that our phone is connected, we can even, connect it via Android Auto. We can also go into the settings. Let's see, we have languages, display, what is that? Okay, that's just wallpapers. Guys, that's actually awesome. Like seriously, you can actually still keep your radio in the car, and this is basically just an add-on. Especially for navigation, this is really perfect. Obviously, it doesn't work right now because I disabled the location services, so you don't know where I'm actually at. Let's test out our dash cam, because this thing has actually a function where you can look at the camera, and there we have it. That is our dash cam in the front. Let's check out if the rear also works. And sure it does. For me, this is a very important feature. Super awesome. And by the way, if you want to get yourself one of these yourself, you can now get 5% off by clicking on the links in the description. You can either order it through Amazon or through the official website. Depending on where you order, there are different promo codes, but I'm gonna leave everything you need to know in the description below. So check it out, because yeah, it's actually pretty cool. Thank you to iToto for supporting this build. Oh, sounds like our paint is finally here. Let's get back home and paint the wing finally.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon. They sing on. catch me howling at the moon.
Alright, and we're almost there. We just need to put all of this interior trim back on, which is gonna be super fun. Alright guys, let's shut the trunk and see, come on, how this thing looks. Damn son! That completely transforms the car. I don't know, let me know in the comments below what you think. But wait, hold up. I don't know, but like seriously, now we got the same front lip as the original. We got the same wing as the original. Finally, it's white. This was really bothering me when it was black. So I'm super glad that this is finally white. I'm noticing that, yeah, the color is almost there. It's not really spot on, but it still looks super cool. I think, especially in the sunlight or something, you will not see this very much, but like, especially because the light in here is kind of weird. Yeah, that was probably the best decision about this entire build, to just paint this wing white. And just look at it, we are almost there. Now we just need to put the engine in so we can finally drive it. But it looks exactly the same. Alright guys, like as I said, please let me know in the comments below what you think about this combo, especially with the lip. It looks insane. At least I think it looks insane. I mean, of course, there is a bit of a color difference, but I think, as I said, in the sunlight, you will probably not be able to see it that much, but this lip just looks insane. By the way, this is actually for an S5, so for the facelift model of the FC. The Cork Sport lip, just for your information, it also fits the S4. On the website it says it doesn't fit the S4, but it actually does. You just have to modify it a little bit, and like, yeah, because the S5 front has like just a different radius of this bend right here, so you will have to modify it a little bit. Yeah, but seriously, that just, I cannot believe how awesome that looks. That's just, it turned out so freaking well, even though it was a spray paint job. And seriously, I cannot imagine how insane this thing will look once the hood is back on, once the engine is finally in the car, because like currently it's as high as a freaking bus. Yeah, obviously we still need to change the wheels and everything, so there's plenty of stuff to do, but I think we did pretty well so far. This is just one step closer now to the original from the anime. We've completely rebuilt this 13B engine right here. But before we can put this baby back into the car, we first need to take care of, well, many things. Because obviously we cannot just throw this freshly rebuilt 13B into the car and drive into the sunset, because there are still so many things that we need to take care of. And don't worry, I'm gonna walk you through everything, but first let's start with our first task, and that would be replacing the old throwout bearing, the clutch slave and master cylinder, as well as the old rubber clutch line. As an upgrade, the clutch line is going to be replaced with a braided steel one, and it is vital that we replace all of these things right now. Because once the engine is back in here, replacing all of these things will be a major pain in the butt, or straight up even impossible without dropping the entire transmission. The purpose of a throwout bearing is to disengage the clutch whenever the driver presses on the clutch pedal. Over time, these bearings can get worn out, so whenever you are replacing your clutch, make sure to also change the throwout bearing for a new one. And now that the old one is out, let's slide the new one over the clutch fork. Lube up all of the contact points very well and put everything back where it belongs. Now it is time to replace the clutch slave and master cylinder. When you press the clutch pedal in your car, well, as long as it has a hydraulically actuated clutch, the pressure from your foot will make the master cylinder push fluid through the lines. Once this fluid reaches your slave cylinder, the fluid will push on the slave cylinder due to the pressure you are providing with your foot, and it will move the slave cylinder as a result, leading to the clutch disengaging. As most of the parts on a car, these things can also wear out, and once again, it is a good idea to change these parts while you're changing your clutch. Once the old slave cylinder is out, I can put the new one in, and once again, it is a good idea to put grease on all of the contact points. In this case, this would be the clutch fork where the slave cylinder presses against it. The new clutch line just screws in and is being secured by a clip. And now that all of the slave cylinder related stuff is out of the way, we can quickly change the master cylinder. This is bolted onto the firewall with studs that go through the firewall. Removing it simply involves loosening two nuts near the clutch pedal. Oh, and by the way, if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing because there's much more content like this ahead. Okay guys, and that is basically it for the slave cylinder, the new braided steel clutch line, as well as the master cylinder. Everything's mounted up very nice and tight. I'm not gonna fill the reservoir yet because, well, obviously there is currently no engine in this engine bay and no clutch that will press against the throwout bearing, which makes me believe that bleeding this entire system is gonna be, well, not very possible. But anyways, with no further ado, we can take care of another very important thing, and that would be this piece of junk right here. This is the old radiator. As you can see, it's super nasty. It has all of this very brittle, disgusting plastic on it, and I think in general the cooling performance of the stock radiator is not the best. So I went ahead and bought myself a brand new full aluminum radiator, which is much beefier than the original one. We will just have to be careful once we're installing the engine to not bump into the radiator in the front, but I really want to see how that looks, so let's go. And if you've watched the first episode of this build series that I've ever posted, you probably remember this. Looks like a normal startup, doesn't it? But the keen-eyed viewers among you have probably noticed that when I started this thing up, the entire exhaust was basically leaking from everywhere. And well, it wouldn't be me if I didn't go for an upgrade, because obviously my stock exhaust is completely leaking. And believe it or not, but this is actually a huge problem for the main inspection. Because obviously once this freshly rebuilt 13V rotary engine is back in the RX-7, this thing is basically ready for its main inspection, and then we can finally get it road legal and finally drive it. And with a little help from my dad, I could jack the car up from the front while he was holding the transmission, until I could support it from below, so it doesn't just hang by the transmission bracing. Hi guys, I'm already very sorry for the bad lighting here, but let me try to show you how this thing is actually mounted. So as you can see, right here where the light is, it's like super weirdly mounted to the catalytic converter, which I think I have to replace because as you can see right here, it's super rusty. And in the back, this is also very weirdly connected to the exhaust pipe itself. It's just very weird. In the back, it's the same. It's all just like extremely weird, but I'm gonna figure it out somehow. So let's go and install this thing. I mean, let's rip the old thing out first and then install the new thing. Alright guys, seriously, just have a look at how disgusting and completely gone this exhaust is. Well, that kind of explains why it was leaking so much. I would say let's get rid of that. On the muffler, there is literally, how big is that? Like almost like, yeah, like 2 centimeter, like 1 inch, 2.5 centimeter, big hole in the muffler. And right here, yeah, I think I don't have to add anything to that. And just, yeah, this just goes all the way, goes on all the way up. I didn't tell you yet, I'm actually gonna fly to South Korea once again. This time I've got something much cooler planned than last time. Last time was a little bit of a fail, the video that I posted in South Korea, because there was literally no cars, and yeah. I got a better plan for this time, so don't worry about that. Yeah, but until then, it's literally 1.5 weeks from now, and until then, I need to install the new exhaust, which I will be able to do. But like the other thing that I need to do is, yeah, this right here, because I really want to put the engine back in and start the RX-7 for the first time before I leave to Korea. And that is going to be a real challenge. Anyways, enough talking. Let's install the exhaust. I'm really curious to see how that will look. Now I'm just gonna wipe everything off, get everything clean, and then it's basically ready to install. I'm super excited to see how that will look because these tailpipes are just, well, insanely massive. Just for reference, this is my fist and I really have some big hands and it easily passes the fist test. Anyways, let's go install this thing. And guys, please take my humble advice when I tell you, never change an exhaust by yourself. It takes way too long, it's way too exhausting, and it's just a pain in the ass. The engine again because today we will find out whether it runs or if it blows up. Now the thing is, before we can start it for the first time, I first need to put the engine back into the RX-7. But before I can do that, I first need to assemble the rest of the engine. And by rest, I mean all of the accessories that go on it. I'm starting off with this pink little bracket, the engine hanger. This will later be used as a solid point on which I can lift the engine on. It also acts as a support from below for the top mount intercooler. Next, it's time for the lower intake manifold. But before, I need to install 2 new O-rings as well as the manifold gasket. With the lower intake manifold bolted down, the next step would be to install the turbo. I'm running the original turbo for now, but no need to worry, an upgrade is coming very soon. Now let's put the upper intake manifold on, to make sure that this fresh 13B can breathe freely. This also makes the short block look much more like an actual engine again. And guys, the 13B is finally completely assembled. That looks super awesome. Like seriously, this thing just looks insane. The black and the pink, it really pops. As you can see, I had to put the downpipe on the engine again because I already wired the O2 sensor in and I cannot remove that anymore. So I just had to lay it on top. I also had to remove the intercooler again, because yeah, there are still some things that I need to get to underneath it. And the next thing I will have to do is tighten this giant 54mm nut with 400 Newton meters of torque, which is literally completely crazy. I don't know what that would be in foot-pounds, but It's much, trust me. To do that, I will have to get the engine crane, hook it up to the engine hangers right here and in the front here, and put it on the ground. Because on this engine stand, when I press down with 400 Newton meters of force, I really think this thing is gonna break, because this thing is really flimsy. As you can see, the entire engine is shaking if I just shake it a little bit. And yeah, let's do that now. I think I'll actually have to call my dad, but I already got 220 Newton meters on it, which is not even half. It is day 2, and what you were just able to enjoy in probably a 1-minute clip of me putting the engine back into the RX-7 actually took me more like 7 hours in real time. Now guys, as you can see right here, I've almost finished everything. There are still a few things that we need to take care of, but this is actually just the home stretch right now. I'm gonna walk you through everything that I've done at the end of the video because, yeah, well, first I want to start it. So let's finish all of the small miscellaneous stuff and then let's finally start it. Let's go. Guys, it is finally time. Now we just need to fill up the car with coolant, with oil, with fuel, and bleed the clutch. And hook up the timing light. And guys, what should I say? It ran, and it ran good. What? Guys, well, there we have it. I really don't know how to describe that feeling, seriously. It was just like, I turned the key and I was really expecting the worst. I was really expecting this thing to, like, I don't know, not run or blow up or whatever. But it literally, you saw it. It immediately turned on. And this was my first ever engine rebuild. I've never taken apart an engine before. I really still cannot believe that this actually worked. And the best thing about it is that it actually started way easier than it did before I did the engine rebuild, which leads me to believe that I've done a good job. No, just kidding. We still need to be careful and we still need to adjust many things. You literally cannot believe how happy I am right now. Like it happens rarely that I'm really excited about something. Like I still remember back then when I had my Skyline, you know, I did a turbo swap and whatever, but I was never really that excited about it. But seriously, I don't know what to say, but this is really a huge accomplishment for me, and yeah. I'm just so happy that this thing finally runs. Now we can finally get this thing road legal. There are still many things that we need to do, but the biggest thing about this is finally done, which would be the engine. And guys, even though the first startup was pretty smooth, like really smooth, there were obviously also some problems. Let me show you. The first one being that on the thermostat bracket connector where, yeah, the gasket is basically leaking just a tiny bit, as you can see down here. But other than that, it's perfect. It's literally perfect. I skipped many things in today's video because obviously I also wanted to start it as quickly as possible and didn't want to leave you waiting, watching me assemble half of the engine, because I know, guys, you were here for the startup and I totally understand. But let me walk you through what I've done real quick for those who are interested in it. Okay, so first of all, as you saw, I ripped out the radiator again because it was really in the way while putting the engine in. I put it back in, put the coolant in, you saw that. I also decided to paint this fan shroud pink. I initially wanted to paint it black because I thought the pink would be just way too much. Sadly, I didn't have black paint anymore, so I was like, okay, screw it, I'm just gonna go for pink. I had a little bit of a runner here, so I just conveniently placed the sticker on it. I've also changed all of the radiator hoses, the upper one and the lower one, for a new one. I've installed the fuel pressure regulator, which is an adjustable one with AN6 lines, and obviously I've put all of the leads in that lead to the spark plugs down there. And guys, previously I told you that the engine install took much longer than expected. It actually took me like 6 or 7 hours. And this was mainly because the engine mounts actually didn't line up at all with the holes in the subframe, which meant I literally spent 5 hours alone on that, just trying to line it up while trying to put the transmission in, because that obviously also needs to line up. Anyways, we got it done. There are still some things we need to do, obviously many things that we need to do, but in particular, some things about the engine. Let me show you. Now, obviously, we need to fix this leak on the thermostat housing. We also need to install the new catch can. I already prepared the hose for that. It comes from the oil filler nozzle down there and from the crank ventilation plug down there. So we will have to install this beautiful little catch can into the RX-7. As I said, what we also have to do is dial in the timing perfectly. We also need to adjust the idle because currently it's just jumping and bouncing a little bit. But that will not be the biggest problem, I think. I will just have to adjust the idle at this idle air control valve. And then, guys, I think we're mint. And guys, well, that's pretty much it for the engine rebuild of the RX-7. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and please hit that subscribe button. Like seriously, I think today you really need to leave a thumbs up because we finally got one step closer to bringing this baby back on the road. After returning from my South Korea trip, which by the way was insane, I've decided to immediately book an appointment for the RX-7's main inspection. This inspection is vital to get this thing road legal and to finally be able to drive it. Now, the only issue with that is that the appointment is actually in a couple of days. And the much bigger issue is that the car is not even close to being done. Install the brakes, time the ignition, do an oil change, install the catalytic converter, calibrate the TPS, and
much more. So I would say, let's not get hung up with all of these things that we need to do for too long, because after that, it is time for the main inspection. Now, the first thing that I want to be doing is actually fix a coolant leak, because when I started the engine for the first time, I noticed that there is a big leak from the thermostat housing. Of course, the RTV can is completely perished. Completely perished. Dude. Okay, definitely not my cleanest work. So I'm gonna let that sit for 24 hours and then I'm gonna tighten it all the way to get a proper seal, hopefully.
Next, I will calibrate the TPS, which sits under the stock intercooler.
How to calibrate a TPS.
The TPS monitors the throttle position, and it not being properly calibrated can lead to all sorts of issues, including a bouncing idle, which I'm experiencing. Okay, so the manual I just saw on the internet actually says I just need to turn the ignition to the on position. I don't even need to turn on the ignition, so that should be enough. Simply set your whatever this is called to 20 kilo ohms, put the black solenoid to the black pin and the red solenoid to the green pin. That should read 1 kilo ohm. It actually reads 3 kilo ohm. Okay, so we've successfully calibrated it to exactly 1 kilo ohm. Now I'm just gonna turn the throttle all the way up to... Now I'm just gonna... Okay, it goes up, yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. Oh well. Okay, so apparently our TPS is actually malfunctioning because once I reach wide open throttle, it actually just goes all the way up to infinity, which is not supposed to happen. That could cause some high RPM issues, but I'm gonna have to test that out once I'm actually driving the car. For now, it seems like it's calibrated, which is a good sign. Next, I want to take care of the brakes. This involves replacing the front and rear rotors and pads, as well as rebuilding the rear caliper.
What are you doing? Oh, okay. Oh, damn.
And once again, the front rotors are not coming off, which is why I want to take care of the rear ones first. I'm installing brand new ones, and on top of that, I'm going for braided steel brake lines. I'm doing all of that while my dad is rebuilding the rear calipers, as they were completely seized, just like the front ones. And because now I need to wait for the fresh calipers, I've decided to take care of one more thing in the meantime, the coolant leak. Now that the RTV is fully dried, I can tighten the bolts all the way to hopefully create a watertight seal. Finally, no more coolant leaks. And just at the right time, my dad finished off the calipers, which means I can finish the rear brakes now.
Okay, I know I've tried it 100 times already, but now I really need to take care of the front brakes.
Okay, that was actually way too dramatic and much easier than I thought.
Sind Sie bereit?
Now, having brand new brakes is good and all, but they stay pretty much useless until they are fully bled. So my buddy Roman and I took care of it while talking some absolute smack in the meantime.
Oh Mann, Alter! Okay, drück mal dreimal. Drück mal dreimal. Jetzt kommen, wir werden so die Bremsen versagen.
Don't listen to him, guys. Don't listen to him. He's doing it properly.
Mann! Ich hasse Teflon-Tape.
Mann, bist du blöd oder so?
Landruf? Lena Meyer Landruf, Junge, was für Landruf?
Immer Landruf verstanden. Landruf.
Den Lena Meyer Landruf, Alter.
Was soll ich das denn wissen, Alter?
Ja, what the fuck, Hauptsache mitsingen, aber die Lyrics nicht kennen, Dummkopf. Nee, Mann.
Das war gut.
Dragon Ball nicht geschaut, deswegen war nicht so witzig.
Das ist ja jetzt eine Lüge, oder?
Nein, ich hab's nicht geschaut.
Ist das dein Ernst?
Ja, ich hab's nicht geschaut.
Warum dass du so einen Knacks hast, Alter? Du fängst keinen einzigen anderen Anime an, wenn du nicht Dragon Ball geschaut hast. Dragon Ball ist immer der Einstieg. Jedes Kind hat immer mit Dragon Ball angefangen. Immer.
Aussage macht so null Sinn.
Doch.
Nein.
Tu das.
And of course, I can't bring the RX-7 to its main inspection without taking care of small things as well. Filling up the windshield washer fluid is a prime example of that. It's such a simple thing, but without it, I can say goodbye to the inspection. Guys, it is the next day, and this means that it's actually the home stretch. There are still a couple of things left that we need to do, but nothing major, which means that, well, let's finish this. I cannot wait to drive the RX-7 finally. And this is where this video went horribly wrong. Okay guys, it is very early in the morning. And there's actually one more thing that we need to do before I can drive this baby to the main inspection. And that will be test out if the brakes are bled. I'm gonna tell you why we need to test that out again in a minute. Also, I want to take it for a quick test drive just to see if everything works or if there are any problems that I still need to fix before we go to the main inspection. There's literally 30 minutes left before the main inspection starts, so we really need to hurry right now. So I'd say, let's take this thing for its first, I guess, maiden voyage. Let's go. Now you could say that this is arguably the most important part of the video, and I gotta tell you, it hasn't been recorded. In fact, there are only 2 little snips of footage, and I'm gonna show them to you right now. One of them is this. Yeah, that was literally it. Now in the second little piece of footage you could actually hear the RX-7 roaring in the distance, and I'm gonna show that to you right now. And even though it's hard to beat, this was not even the worst part of the video. Do you remember when I tried to calibrate the TPS, the throttle position sensor? Well, as I said previously... Okay, so apparently our TPS is actually malfunctioning. That could cause some high RPM issues, but I'm gonna have to test that out once I'm actually driving the car. And I knew that with the throttle position sensor not being properly calibrated or actually being malfunctioning, the car wouldn't run great. However, I did not expect the car to run that bad. I took the RX-7 for its first maiden voyage, which was awesome. However, there were a few problems. First problem being that when you saw me bleed the brakes with my body ramen, this was the first time I bled the brakes. After that, I actually bled the brakes for 3 more times, because as soon as I started the car and the brake booster actually started working, the car just completely lost all of the brake pressure. Then I bled it again with my dad yesterday, and after that I was pretty confident. I didn't test it out because it was already nighttime and I didn't want to wake up the neighbors by starting up the FC. However, just a few minutes ago when I took it for its first test drive around the block, it didn't work. Nothing worked. I didn't have any brake whatsoever. The car was just running so rich. Thankfully I have this handy dandy little AFR gauge down there, so I could actually monitor how rich or how lean the car is running. I could tell that the car is running very, very rich. Even when idling, it was around like 9.0 or something, which is crazy rich for idling. It should be actually around like 13.5 while idling. So that explains a lot. But the root of the problem still remains unsolved, which would be the TPS, the throttle position sensor. I will have to get a new one. And guys, long story short, I couldn't make it to the main inspection. The brakes were too mushy, there was still air in the lines. The car didn't even run properly. I tried it in different ways, like with a little less throttle, with a little more throttle, and in both cases the car was just like bogging crazily, which is a giant failure for, well, today's video. But, and this is the most important thing, I think it's actually good that the car didn't run and we couldn't make it to the main inspection. Let me tell you why. Now, as I told you in the beginning of the video, I did not have much time to finish off the car. And to be brutally honest with you, I'm not even sure if this thing would have passed the main inspection because, well, wipers didn't work, this turn signal didn't work. Oh, also the license plate illumination did not work. And the brakes, well, they also didn't work properly. Now, I could be in a very bad mood now and I could cry about like, oh, I didn't make it to the main inspection. However, this gives me the excellent opportunity to finally take my time to get this thing absolutely perfect for the main inspection, fix all of the problems, so there's no risk at all that this thing will fail. Because, guys, we are so close to finally driving this thing. And I'm very, very excited. I've been working on this thing non-stop to get it back on the road since its last registration over 14 years ago. In the previous video, I thought it would finally be able to pass its main inspection, but nope, it didn't. My journey with this car up until this point hasn't been easy, to say the least. In the previous 4 months, it went from a real barn find to a properly working and polished car. Okay, that last part was actually a lie, but we are so close to finally getting this thing ready. So I would say, let's finish this thing once and for all. First job of the day, fixing the side turn signal. This has to work for the main inspection, or else the RX-7 will not pass. For this, I got some help from my buddy Ramon.
I have big chest. You see, I can wiggle them. Wiggle.
You want to fix my turn signal.
Which one, left
And
or
you have
right?
never worked on a car before.
That's
You
not
have
true.
never worked on a car.
This one?
Yes.
Okay, we need a screwdriver. Okay, first you have to... Okay, now I think you can just... Oh, yeah, you can just... Was ist für eine Scheiße, Mann? Das lässt sich auch nicht drehen, es rutscht. Ja, merkst du was? Fick. The phone is ringing.
Check it.
Wait, who is it? Is it my dad?
Oh!
Is it? Who is it? Oh. Yeah, that's my ex-girlfriend. Du kannst nicht reinschalten.
Doch,
das ist ganz
Oi.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Now, the funny thing is that here my buddy actually tried to clean the contact points of the bulb, which we believed were just a little corroded, and that would be the reason for the turn signal not working. Little did we know that the turn signal was actually not even plugged in.
I mean, just forget about the main inspection.
Yeah, let's just not do it.
Yeah.
Thanks, man, for helping me, but I guess I'm sorry for wasting your time. Next, I need to bleed the brakes again, which would be the 5th time, so I think it's needless to say that my previous attempts weren't that successful. Which is why we're gonna try a different method now, because on the internet I've actually read that on FCs you should actually do it in reverse order. So what we did before is actually start with the rear brakes first, bleed them, work our way to the front, and then bleed the ABS module last. But now we're starting with the ABS module and working our way from the front brakes to the rear brakes, in the hopes of it working this time. Ja, drück nochmal. Nochmal.
Hi guys, my name is Mesh, and we are playing today Call of Duty Warzone. Warzone.
By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, I'd be happy if you consider supporting the channel by hitting the like and subscribe button. Also, if you want to support me even further, you can click the link in the description and become a channel member just like Lucas did right here. Because by becoming a channel member, you do not only greatly support me and the channel, but you also get some exclusive goodies such as early access to videos, highlighted comments, your name in the video, content polls, and in the future also exclusive live streams. Oh, that's a problem. Dude, just as a reference, this stuff was red before. Yeah, smells a little bit like gas because I flooded the engine a couple of times. But thankfully, that's nothing we can't fix by giving the Lucky 7 a quick oil change. And now that we got that out of the way,
it's finally time. The brand new TPS just arrived. Well, in this case, it's actually a second-hand one, but the seller said it works and it has been tested. So we're gonna test that out.
Now, if you haven't watched the previous video and you're wondering what the hell is going on, let me bring you up to speed. The TPS is a throttle position sensor, and without it working properly, the car doesn't really run. And with mine being completely toast, the car didn't run.
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well. So I'd say let's get back to it. Alright guys, the new TPS or throttle position sensor is installed. It's also calibrated, which means we can take one more thing off the list. Well, now that the engine should be running, we can actually start timing the engine with this little timing light that I already hooked up. So I would say, let's start it.
I was super stoked to finally have the TPS problem solved, and I was very optimistic that the car would finally run properly. But when starting it, something didn't seem right. It stalled itself out, and even when it ran for a few seconds, it just didn't sound right. I've searched for days and even got in contact with an expert from Switzerland. He has been working with rotaries for over 18 years and even he couldn't figure out the problem. However, he left me with a suggestion.
Okay, Klopfsensor.
When the knock sensor is faulty or detects detonation, the car's computer enters sort of a limp mode and retards ignition timing to protect the engine. Exactly my symptoms. And after testing the sensor for proper operation, my worst nightmare came true.
It's broken. Oh god.
This little thing is neither easy nor cheap to replace. Getting a new one costs way more than I can afford to spend for a little sensor. Thankfully though, the guy had a spare, which he was willing to lend me for testing. So I drove to Switzerland, picked up the new part and thought, that's it, it's fixed now.
You've got to be kidding me, no way. No freaking way. That's the new knock sensor that I just borrowed from the Swiss guy, and it's broken. I literally just completely wrecked his knock sensor. In fact, I didn't wreck it. Apparently my RX-7 wrecked it. Okay, so the initial issue was that once I'm timing the engine is actually perfectly timed. It's running at 5 degrees at the lading spark plug. This means it's timed correctly. However, after 1 minute or so of running, it actually retards the timing to top dead center, which means that the ECU or the computer of the car actually thinks there is knock or premature detonation, and it gets this information from this little sensor right here. Now, the expert from Switzerland actually told me that my knock sensor might be broken, which after testing it, I could confirm that. So this is basically trash. Now, as I previously said, he was actually kind enough to lend me one of his working knock sensors, so I can basically test out if that's the actual problem. Well, it is the actual problem. However, for some reason, the RX-7 keeps frying knock sensors, because this was working. I tested it before. Now I just tested it and apparently it's broken as well. Now, the good thing about all of this is that now I finally know what the actual problem is. It has to be some problem with the wiring or whatever. It's probably just grounding out somewhere. The bad part about this is that now I do not only have to get myself a brand new one of these, but I also have to get the Swiss guy a brand new one of these, which is gonna be a little expensive.
It's safe to say my week hasn't been going great so far. No matter how hard I tried, nothing seemed to work out the way it was supposed to. And right now, I'm at a point where I don't even know what to do anymore, because right now, the past 4 months I've been working on the car to get it up and running again just feel so useless. But if there's one thing I've learned in these 4 months, it will be...
keep going, bitch.
And that's exactly what I'm gonna do. We've come way too far to give up now. So, next up, testing the wiring. My dad and I checked every single wire that goes to both the main ECU and the knock ECU. I've also made sure all of the grounding points are nice and clean. And after putting the upper intake manifold and the intercooler back in place, we've decided to replace the knock sensor with a 270 kilo ohm resistor to check if the RX-7 still runs bad and retards timing.
Alright everyone, test results are in and they do not look too promising. My dad and I tested all of the wiring going to the ECU. They seemed totally fine. So we decided to wire in a 270 kilo ohm resistor in place of the knock sensor. That way we could fool the ECU into thinking that a knock sensor is connected and that it's actually reading the correct values. Sadly, this did not fix the problem, which means wiring is okay, knock sensor is okay, which leads me to believe that it could actually only be two things at this point. Either it is the main ECU or the knock control unit, which sits right behind this pillar, or it has something to do with the crank angle sensor, which I've re-stepped to ensure proper timing. So before buying a new ECU, I think it's a good idea to test that out first. Alright, so what I will do now is actually find the top dead center point of the engine by myself, and I'm gonna show you how you can also do it. Then I will reinsert the crank angle sensor back into the engine to make sure that I have a proper point from which I can actually time the engine. Now, I know this is a little technical, and if you're not interested in all of this rotary technical stuff, feel free to skip ahead to this point in the video. But to all of you who are interested, and especially to those who are in a very similar situation, maybe you did a rebuild on your engine, maybe you got a new engine and your engine didn't come with a crank pulley down there, and it's missing these little two marks on the pulley right there, which you will need to time the engine. It is very easy to find top dead center and to put these two markings on there. Now, if your engine is not inside the car, but on an engine stand, or well, basically outside the car, it is very easy. You can basically just look into the spark plug holes, because you need some way to be able to look into those holes. In my case, the engine is installed into the car, which means I will have to use one of these little things. This is a boroscope or endoscope. I don't know what it's called. These are super cheap. You can get them on Amazon, on eBay. I'm gonna leave a link in the description below. This literally cost me 20 euro. This enables us to actually look into the spark plug holes to find top dead center.
First, put your camera into the trailing spark plug hole of the rear rotor housing and turn the engine from the crank pulley clockwise till you see an apex seal in the exact middle of the hole. It doesn't matter which apex seal it is. Put a mark on your pulley. Then insert the camera into the leading hole of the rear housing and spin the engine clockwise until you see the same exact apex seal which you just saw at the trailing hole. And then put a second mark on your pulley.
Alright, and now that we've got both our marks set, one there and one down here, all we need to do is basically just find the exact middle of the radius in between those 2 points from here to down there. This middle. Okay, and once you've found the exact middle of these two marks, this right here is your new absolute top dead center. And it is as easy as that. As you can see, the very right mark is my top dead center mark. The pink one is my 5 degrees after top dead center mark, which would be 5 millimeters to the left of the top dead center mark. And the second white one is actually 20 degrees. We will need both of these marks for timing the engine later.
The FC is definitely running a lot better now, but it still retards timing for some reason. The BAC valve which controls the idle was also faulty, so I decided to rip it out and block everything off.
It's Christmas. Guys, in this little box I have basically everything that should fix my problems. First, we have our brand new knock sensor, the same exact thing. Now, apart from that, I also went ahead and got myself a new knock control ECU because I think mine could actually be fried, and this is why the knock sensors keep dying. And also, as a small upgrade, I got myself a original ECU. This is actually the American and Swiss spec ECU, which have slightly more power. They have a different mapping. So let's install all of this stuff, time the engine, warm it up, and see if this thing rips. Alright, that's the knock control box.
And there you have it, a perfectly running FC. It was still having the smallest misfires at idle, but after doing a bit of research, this is apparently totally normal if you're running a lightweight flywheel and no catalytic converter on the stock ECU. This is the first time everything works properly on this thing, and to be honest, at the moment there's nothing I need to fix anymore for the main inspection.
And you all know what that means.
But before I can drive it, and most importantly drive it to the main inspection, I will first need to get license plates and a short-term registration.
Okay everyone, it's finally time. I'm actually a little bit nervous because obviously it's a maiden voyage of this car and many things can go wrong. So I got my fire extinguisher right here just in case anything happens. Now also because I'm running temporary license plates, this means that I'm only allowed to drive the RX-7 to the main inspection with these license plates. And now because I want to make this attempt of filming or like capturing my first impressions of driving this car extra special, I decided to not only film it from this perspective, but also from this perspective right here, and maybe if everything works well, also with my GoPro, but well, sometimes it has its moments, so I'm not expecting that to work. Starts. Damn. We are rolling, let's go. Okay, good news, it doesn't have these weird misfires anymore, which is, well, a good thing I guess. It drives so smooth! Now obviously for the first couple of meters that I'm driving, I want to check over everything and make sure that everything's good. First of all, battery is charging, which means that our alternator is good, I guess. We also have good oil pressure. Temperature, well, didn't change yet, obviously. I cannot believe it runs. It actually runs! It runs! And it stinks. It stinks like a scooter times 10. Because I'm running premix. But the sound. Alright everyone, we're actually almost at the main inspection, so wish me luck. And I really don't know if I can film anything. I'll try my best to give you like at least a little bit of footage. I'll see you in a second. Guys, I just got back from the main inspection and guess what? You see that? You see that? Oh, hold up. Actually, I need to show from the rear. That's the one. That's the one. This stamp means that we passed main inspection and this thing is actually finally road legal from now on.
Oh, I actually gotta correct myself because I did not just come back from the main inspection. I actually came back from the place where you register cars in Germany. But I cannot believe that this thing actually passed and that this thing is finally road legal. It's just insane. I cannot believe it. And to anyone who has built their own engine, who like modified their car, or to anyone who has been working for a extended period of time on their car to get it up and running and road legal again, I think all of you will understand what I'm feeling right now, because to summarize, I guess it's just a little overwhelming right now. But now that this thing is road legal and we are not only allowed to drive it to the main inspection, but in fact we're allowed to drive it anywhere we want now, you know what that means. Guys, I guess it's needless to say that now that this thing is road legal, we're gonna have so much fun with this thing, and this opens up so many more possibilities to modify this thing and to work on this thing, and I'm so excited. But it's also needless to say that I cannot, sadly, rev it all the way to redline yet, even though I really want to, and it's really tempting because obviously it's a fresh engine build. I need to break it in first, so we're gonna stay under 4K for now, but not for long. Because I cannot get enough of this sound. Guys, I still cannot believe that this thing actually runs, and it runs so well. It's just an insane feeling, and to be honest, it's kind of overwhelming. Anyways, I think there's a very important thing that I should address, and that would be, well, how's this project gonna continue? And I'm very stoked to tell you that, well, now that this thing actually passed its main inspection and that, well, now that it's actually ready to drive, this project is far from being over. And I don't want to spoil too much, but I'm gonna leave you a little hint on what's gonna happen with my RX-7 very, very soon, and that would be this right here. Most of you can probably tell what this is and what that means, but I'm just gonna leave it at that. And this is also the point in the video where I really want to thank my channel members Aiden and Lucas for supporting videos, because as you can imagine, filming these videos takes a huge amount of time and it's also not that cheap. So really, thank you so much for supporting me. See on this model right here, this is actually the car from the anime. First of all, it has the Red Sun sticker as well as these stickers on the door, and this means that we obviously also have to do that. And guys, trust me when I tell you, this is long overdue, and I'm super excited to finally get these stickers on my FC now. So let's go. I decided that I wanted to get these stickers done by a professional, since I really suck at putting stickers on myself. So that's where we're going next. We are back at the shop, and as you can tell, this thing looks totally insane, and this brings us much closer to the real deal from the anime. But first, we need to address the performance of the car. Because let's be honest, currently the FC doesn't deserve having these stickers on it the way it's performing. And in order to make it perform like the real deal, we obviously do not only need to address the power, which we are going to address,
in the next video, but we also need to take care of the ride comfort. And for this, I got myself a set of brand new coilovers from Max Peeting Rods, and hear me out. I actually wanted to install a set of D2 or K-Sport coilovers in the FC, but then I came across these Max Peeting Rod coilovers, which literally cost me €300, which would be this much in dollars and this much in pounds, for those of you who are interested. And the thing is, I'm probably not gonna keep them in the car, but for €300, I thought, well, it's worth a try, because I've heard so many good things about these, believe it or not, but I've also heard so many bad things about these, and I thought for €300, it might be worth at least trying them and seeing how they actually perform, because I always appreciate it when brands go out of their way and create a product that's not only performing good, but that's, well, also affordable for many, many people, because a set of coilovers obviously is not the most cheap part that you can install in your car. We're just gonna try them out and see if they suck or if they're actually good value.
Haven't we made it, my love? Oh, honey, look how we made it this far. Hasn't the pace been a long bit, honey?
Alright, and now that we've got access to the old set of, well, these are actually not coilovers, this is just the stock suspension, but you can see just how crusty it is. I can imagine that the dampeners are just completely shot. How seized can a bolt be? Dude, seriously, I cannot get this off. I cannot even get it loose with a breaker bar or with my impact driver gun, whatever. On the highest setting. On the highest setting. Oh, this took me literally an hour. Oh my god. We got it out finally. Okay, so now the next step would be to take our new coilovers, and as you can see, these are way too short. These are much shorter than the original ones, and we want to get the new ones as close as possible to the original ones, and then from there we can actually lower our coilovers. Now, it is also important to mention that if you install coilovers, most people would lower their car by changing the height of the, or basically the length of the spring. This is what you do not want to do. You want your spring to sit in there firmly, and you want to actually adjust the height by twisting this lower portion in and out. Because if you do not do that, and if you decide to change your ride height via the spring, the entire characteristics of the suspension actually changes, and that's what we do not want. We want it to stay the same, but we only want to change the ride height. I definitely cannot wait to go on a test drive and, well, just test out if these are as bad as many people say or as good as many people say. Anyways, until we get there, we first need to repeat what we just did 3 more times, so let's go. address the elephant in the room, which would be, what do you actually get for 300 euro worth of coilovers? First up, I gotta say, I'm not an expert with like this entire suspension coilover stuff, so I can only give you my personal opinion. But just as a reference, I've driven KW coilovers before, I've driven D2 coilovers before, different ones. In my R32 Skyline back then I had the D2 Trek, which was very, very stiff and very bouncy. In my 350Z HR, I had also a D2, but the street version, which was much more balanced and much more comfortable. So I can at least kind of tell you in which ballpark this Max Speeding Rods coilover kit kind of falls. And first up, I gotta say, for 300 euro, it is very impressive what you actually get. Not only build quality wise, but also ride comfort wise. Yes, they are a little bouncy. Yes, they are very stiff. And yes, my back hurts when I get out of the car after a nice drive. But for 300 euro, guys, let's just be clear and let's be honest here. 300 euro for a set of coilovers is nothing. Nothing, absolutely nothing. And the fact that you can even get a set of coilovers for this price is just completely mind-boggling to me. Still, now, for a reference, I would actually put these right in between the D2 Street and D2 Track. They are not as stiff as the D2 Track coilovers, which is a good thing. They are a little more bouncy than that. The ride comfort is not as balanced as what you will get with a set of D2 coilovers, obviously. So I would only recommend you buying these coilovers for your car if, one, your stock suspension completely sucks, or if you're in a position where you cannot afford KW, D2, Tane coilovers, whatever, then I think these coilovers are actually a very good deal. That said, next up, wheels. After 4 long months of waiting, and I know you've probably already guessed what kind of wheels I went for, they are finally here from Japan. And of course I had to go for none other than the Watanabe RS wheels, which Ryosuke conveniently used in stage 2, I think, or stage 1 of the anime Initial D. And guys, I'm just super excited to finally have these here because I've been waiting for these for 4 months. They had to be manufactured specially. They were basically a bespoke wheel for my FC. And to be honest, I've never seen Watanabe in 17-inch. So I'm super curious to see how they will look on the car, because these are just the last puzzle piece that's missing to make my FC look like the real deal from the anime, apart from the mirrors, which I'm gonna address in a later video. Let's get this thing ready. Seriously, just look at the girth. Guys, to be honest, if you keep in mind where we came from and how this thing looked before, I just cannot believe that we finally managed to make it look like the real deal from the goddamn anime. Seriously, I cannot believe how crazy this journey turned out to be, and well, where we are now, it's just insane. This thing is basically a one-to-one look-alike, at least. Except for the mirrors, which I'm gonna address in a future video. Sadly, these are super expensive, and I don't have the budget right now to buy myself a set of like $600 mirrors. But check this out, these wheels are just insane. In the front, as you can see, I had to remove them again because sadly they were actually rubbing on the inside on the coilovers, which means I will have to get some spacers, which is not a problem because I can actually adjust the camber, so I can basically adjust the fitment perfectly, so I'm not worried about that. Anyways, to summarize, guys, we made it. This is it. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, which would be, how's this project gonna continue? And for those of you who read my community post on YouTube, you know that I still have big plans for this thing. Because now that the FC looks like the real deal from the anime, we obviously need to make it perform like the real deal from the anime as well. And for this, I want to say a huge thank you to Max Speeding Rods for supporting the build with one of their brand new Street Performance turbos. Now guys, the coilovers, I actually bought them myself, so I'm gonna be very honest with you about the performance of the coilovers, but because they sent me this over for free, I'm totally gonna lie to you, and if this sucks, I'm just gonna tell you this is a wonderful turbo and I'm gonna make you buy it. Just kidding. As always, I'm gonna be 100% transparent, but I actually agreed to this deal because in my R32 Skyline back then I also ran a Max Speeding Rods turbo and I was actually more than satisfied with it. I ran it over 2 years and it still runs perfect to this day. So when I heard that they came out with a brand new lineup, I was very curious to see how these perform in comparison to their old turbos. So what do we get in the box? First of all, quick start guide, warranty stuff and a few stickers, gaskets, everything you need right here. But most importantly, this monstrosity of a turbo, and wow, this is so heavy. I can't even hold it up that long. Now, what's so special about these is that they actually feature a billet compressor wheel and they are just super high quality. Like seriously, totally unbiased opinion right here. But when I unboxed this thing for the first time, I was actually kind of impressed that for this price point, I think this is right around like $350, $400. And this is a huge turbo that you can actually get this good of a quality for such an affordable price. So I'm very excited to finally test this out. I've been waiting so long for parts to arrive so I can finally install this, and I hope this will bring us a little closer to the real deal from the anime, at least performance-wise. I want to take the time and fix some things first that have been bothering me about this car for ages. First things first, I really want to do some maintenance work on the RX-7, but what I want to tackle mainly today is this. As you can tell, the bumper hood gap is actually ginormous on this thing. Before I got the RX-7, it actually got a new paint job. The paint shop really didn't do the greatest job of reassembling everything. We're gonna try to figure out what's wrong with the FC to narrow down this gap because this is really bothering me. But before, let's do a quick oil change. Car is on rams, the shop is completely smoked out. You can probably not see it on camera, but I can definitely smell it. Whoa, really need to open some windows. Actually, funny thing, every time I start the RX-7, my carbon monoxide, is it called like that? Every time I start the RX-7, it shows this little skull symbol, which usually means death. But anyways, and guys, if you want to stay updated on the latest videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button because literally more than 80% of you guys who are watching this video right now are not subscribed to the channel. And the best way to help me out is just to click that subscribe button, watch the videos, because there are many more cool projects and very special projects coming up, such as the Porsche 930 right there. Also, if you want to support me even further, you can now click the link in the description and head over to my Patreon page, because there you can get exclusive benefits such as early access to new videos, content posts, exclusive live streams that I'm going to do in the future, etc. Many cool things. Welcome to the most exciting part of every oil change, which would be draining the old oil. I just need to get to that drain plug somehow, because as you can see, we really don't have that much room. I also had to jack up the car a little bit more because I just couldn't get under it. I mean, I am a skinny guy, but I'm not that skinny. All right, let's see how this oil looks. Oh. And as you can tell, oh, still looks fine to me, to be honest. All right, and as to be expected, we got a whole bunch of tiny little metal shavings on the tip of the screw. That's, well, to be expected because obviously I rebuilt the engine. I've installed new stationary gear bearings as well as new side seals, apex seals. So some of that material that's being broken in just gets into the oil. That's totally fine. I also used break-in oil, which definitely contributes to that because, well, it just makes the break-in period faster, I guess. Anyways, I'm just gonna clean this off, put it back on the car, and then we can fill up the oil. But other than that, it smells like oil. It doesn't really smell like gas, which tells me that our compression should be quite good. We don't have that much blow-by. This would also explain why I don't really have any liquid being caught in my catch can, which I guess is a good sign. So let's fill it up with some new oil and put this back. Let's go. All right, most of the old oil is drained. As you can see, there are just some drips coming down. That means we can put you, little buddy, back where you belong. Now for the oil filter, especially on the RX-7, it is very simple to change it because it just sits right on top of the engine right here. Now, whenever you're replacing an oil filter, make sure to not tighten it as much as I did. I just tightened it by hand once when the engine was still out of the car. Apparently I didn't account for the very uncomfortable position that you need to put yourself in to get this thing back out. But we're getting there. I can already feel it breaking loose. Before I unscrew it all the way, I just want to get some tissues. Okay, to be honest, I mean, getting to the oil filter on an RX-7 is pretty simple because it's just on top of the engine, but removing it without covering your entire engine in oil is a whole nother story. Come here, little buddy. Come here, little buddy. Don't make a mess. And after fighting for a little bit, we got our old oil filter out. Now for the new one, you would usually want to fill your new oil filter up with your brand new engine oil, lube up this O-ring and, well, install it. In my case, since putting oil into the oil filter before installing it would mean that I would cover my entire engine in engine oil, I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna loop up this O-ring nicely to make sure that when I'm changing the oil next time on the RX-7, this thing will come off easily. For this, I'm just gonna take a tiny bit of the old engine oil. Doesn't really matter, this is not gonna come in contact with the rest of the engine oil anyways. This is purely for, well, making it easier to remove it once again when you're doing the next oil change. All right, O-ring nicely lubed up, let's put it in. Drink, my precious. This stuff is just super thick. This is 20W50. It's just insane. I think I would never put this in any of my other cars, but since it's a rotary, this thing actually calls for this type of oil. Okay, so now I'm just gonna let it run for a second to give the new oil the chance to, well, spread everywhere nicely in the engine. And then we'll check the oil level again until we're there. Let's go. And I'm turning it off. Oh, by the way, as you can tell, I only got 700 kilometers on this engine, and for these entire 700 kilometers, I actually used break-in oil. So it's about time that we change this oil. All right. Sweet. Now let's take care of this mess right here. First, that means that we, well, need to find out what's actually wrong with the panel gaps here and what's the actual reason that's causing these weird gaps. Because let's be honest, we won't get very far if we just start adjusting things randomly. We need to look for the culprit first. The first thing that I really notice is that the fender gap is actually kind of big, especially compared to the rear door gap. But also, if we look up here, these panels actually line up perfectly. That's the hood, fender, and the door. And down here, you can tell that the fender is just a little longer than the headlight. Now, I could just bring the headlight a little further down, but then it wouldn't line up with the hood anymore. But before I remove both of the fenders and do all of this work, I first want to remove the front bumper and see if I can maybe just fix it by bringing the front bumper a little closer. And I noticed this pretty early on when I got the FC, is that all of these bolts that are supposed to hold in the bumper are actually missing. I could theoretically push the bumper much more in, bolt them down, and we should be good to go. Woo. Super simple. One arch liner right there. And that in there is where we need to be. One nut, the second nut down there, oh, our camera doesn't focus at all, and the third nut down there. I just found something that is a little concerning, to be honest. As you can tell, there are many holes, and in these holes there are supposed to be screws that actually hold the bumper in. And literally every single one of these, the screw is missing. And well, this actually seems to be a common theme on my FC. As I said before, before I got the FC, it actually got a brand new paint job, and to be honest, it was a pretty affordable paint job. But regardless, like seriously, if you do not reassemble the car properly, especially when there are so many bolts and screws missing, dude, like, there's no excuse for that. And I think I don't even have that on video, but like a couple of months ago, I had the same exact issue on the rear bumper, where all of these bottom screws and bolts are missing that actually hold the rear bumper in. This does not only create a huge problem for the panel gaps of the car, but, well, it also makes it pretty dangerous, because at any given moment, this thing could actually just fall off and be a huge safety hazard. So what I'm trying to do now is basically just bring the bumper a little closer, put some bolts in, and hope that the bumper gap gets a little smaller. I don't really have that much wiggle room. I'm trying to adjust everything as we go. Now just some more of those. And in you go. All right, bumper is back on the car. I put all of the necessary screws in. Let's see how this looks now. Oh wow, it actually didn't make any difference. Seriously, what the hell? I thought that would make a difference. Okay, to be fair, there is definitely a noticeable difference. Especially from far away, yeah, that looks much better. Now I just need to bring the headlight a little lower. This gap is big in general on the S4 model, so I'm quite happy with that. I'm just gonna bring the headlights down, as I said, and well, I would count that as an improvement. But most importantly, the bumper is now nice and secure on the car. This is the before, and this is the after. Now, the last two things that I want to take care of for today is, first of all, the taillights. And this is one thing that has been bothering me forever now. Like, ever since I installed these taillights, this has been bothering me so much. The biggest issue about all of this is that I do not have any taillight seals, like gaskets or weather sealing, whatever you want to call it. This means that when I drive the RX-7, and you know that rotaries produce a huge amount of exhaust fumes, all of these fumes get into the cabin. And let's face it, driving around, especially for a long period of time, while being exposed to these fumes, is probably not the healthiest thing to do. So I want to fix that. Now, the only issue with all of that is that these gaskets or these seals, if you buy them from Mazda, these are crazy expensive. And as you can see, I'm not only missing this weather seal right here, but on the back of the taillights, there's also this, well, rubber seal that seals off the entire taillight from the interior. And because that's missing, that's actually the main reason why I'm completely getting poisoned by all of these exhaust fumes. So let's fix that. But because I do not want to buy these seals directly from Mazda or from Atkins or whatever, because that's in the US anyways, and the shipping just is super expensive, I thought, how about we just make them ourselves? Because it's probably not too hard. It's basically just rubber mats or something that I can cut. Oh baby, hardware store. Always feel like a kid at a candy shop when I come here. Okay, so we are looking for some kind of rubberized foam mat that's about like 5 mil thick, not too thin, because obviously we want a proper seal on the headlights, and I think I'm actually Totally wrong alley. Let me ask where we can find this real quick. So, seems like I was actually in the right alley, and that's exactly what I need, but the problem is that I kind of needed a little more thicker. That's literally just 2 mil. These could maybe work if I like double layer these. Yeah, I think that should be good. Just gonna take 4 of these. Let's go. All right, got what we need. Let's get back to the shop.
Where'd you come from? Where did you go? Okay, seriously guys, do you have like an English? Obviously English is not my native language, German is my native language. So in German we have a word for when a song is stuck in your head, which would be Ohrwurm. Basically it just means earworm, kinda. So when a song is stuck in your head, it's an earworm. Do you also have that in English? Or do you just say like, oh, this song is stuck in my head? Because at the moment I kind of got an earworm of this goddamn song. I don't even know the name. Oh, I don't even know the lyrics. Cotton Eye Joe? Cotton Eye Joe? Is that even? And there you go. Wow, that's super dirty. So let me fill you in on what I'm actually trying to do here. So I bought these little rubber mats that you would usually use in elementary school art class for, well, building stuff, making stuff. Anyways, this is basically the same material as the Mazda OEM seals or gaskets or whatever you want to call it. I'm just gonna double layer these, put them on here. They're actually the perfect size. So I just need to cover this rim, is it called rim? I have no idea. And we got our gasket. Oh yeah, oh my god, that actually works perfect. Just gonna poke some holes in there. Sorry. Okay, I'm just gonna cut this stuff out and should be good to go. Just like that. Awesome. And this is definitely better than spending like over $50 for one of these. And I need 2 for 2 taillights. Let's install this thing back on the car. Now before I bolt this down, I really want to kind of find the reason why this taillight sits, well, a little crooked, because I want to make it a little straighter. Perfect, that looks much better. As you can see, it is still a little crooked, but compared to the other one, much better. I somehow managed to get it a little more straight. Anyways, the main thing here that I'm most excited about is that we finally got some weather seals, or whatever you want to call it. I still don't know what to call it. So hopefully no more fumes inside the cabin while I'm driving. That's gonna make all of the difference. Super excited. Let's repeat the same steps on the other taillight, and then let's give this thing a proper clean. That's just nasty. Let's go. And it is done. I think that looks much better than before. And today I really gotta say, at least the bumper, adjusting the taillights a little bit, and especially installing the gaskets, these were just things that I really just put off because I was just procrastinating so hard, to be honest, to do these things, because it's just like tedious, boring work where you don't really see or feel the difference that much, but it just needs to be done, and these are the things that I tend to put off most of the time. Now I'm actually super excited that I got that out of the way, because even though it is subtle, it makes all the difference. And you know what also makes all the difference? Yeah, you're right, giving it a proper wash. Alright everyone, we are on our way to the car wash, and this is the perfect opportunity to finally test out if there are still exhaust fumes coming inside the cabin. So far, I cannot smell anything, but I think this will only show once we get up to speed a little bit, because if you didn't know, on many cars, actually on most cars, there's much turbulence happening in the back of the car. So all of your exhaust fumes basically get sucked up back on the car. That's why, especially on cars without catalytic converters, you can often see all of that dust on the bumper and stuff like that. Same case on my RX-7, but so far, fresh air. Oh, by the way guys, I totally forgot to tell you, but I actually got an alignment for the RX-7, and
it really drives so much better than before. Steering wheel is finally straight again. Everything works as it should, and I couldn't really film it sadly because it's kind of like a small private shop, and it's kind of weird to point a camera in random people's faces. Anyways, we got an alignment. Let's go to the car wash. I'm super excited to finally have this thing clean again. Speed bumps with a max speeding rods coilover kit is really not all that fun. Right, everybody, RX-7 is nice and clean again. Well, not as nice as I hoped for, but we can still fix that with some nice tissues that I have at my shop. Let's go. Tunnel! Hell yeah! Whew. Back at the shop. I've just cleaned the RX-7 a little more with these handy dandy little tissues. These are actually awesome, especially if you want to get rid of all of these dead insects on your bumper or your side mirrors or whatever. This thing, wow, it's pretty shiny again. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.